Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And this is episode 161, and it's now just dawned on me that I have that same cadence every time I do that opening.
It's funny because I was going to say that this time it sounded different to normal.
Oh, interesting. In my mind, it sounds the same. And what if it's insufferable? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what if there's people out there that have gone, I hate the way he says that?
Well, the good thing about that is that if people don't want to listen, it's very quick. It's a very quick part of for them to like check out on.
Yeah.
If they can get past that, boom, we're sorted.
Well, our metrics suggest that actually they don't make it any further than that bit. So
really? So it's
YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Guys, YouTube's different to podcast.
Oh,
wow, that
funny.
got sad very quickly. We're talking about.
Hi.
Thank you for those of you that are still here, by the way. We actually do. We really appreciate you guys.
The 50% that did get past that is now 25%.
Yeah, they're like, oh, and he's gone into self-deprecation. Okay, we are talking about the Seanan McGuire Lorwyn Eclipsed main story article.
No side stories here, bitch.
We never really do.
No.
I think we did maybe once or twice, but
I think it might be more to our detriment this time than normal. And I typically will, and I haven't this time. And it's funny, like, to begin with, I thought that a few of the grumbles that I had would probably disappear if I did read the side stories, but now I'm under the impression that the things that I don't like, I don't think would have changed if I had read the side stories. It probably would have been a great reflection of like, oh, maybe this is why I don't like the main story.
yeah. So we took a bit of time off as well. Just it's only been about a month since we did our last podcast, which is kind of on trend for us. But we're going back to the Lorwyn Eclipse stories because, as we all know, in the current Magic world, once pre-release hits, we're on to the next set.
Well, quite literally, with this pre-release, we're in a set far down the line, you know.
For those of you that pulled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cards in your pre-release, what did you build?
Yeah.
What was the shell?
Imagine like you're trying like, oh, I wonder what legendary I'm going to get from my pre-release to build a new commander deck, and before you know it, you've built Krang and Shredder, you know?
Krang and Shredder, Kithkin Tribal? Type of apologies. No, we're talking about the stories, and I think it's worth doing so. Other podcasts and other media outlets that have covered the stories obviously did it a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like I know that having now read them the first time and then revised them, and then you've done like a full reread twice now. There's been a lot to digest, and what I thought was on the face of it was quite a simple A to B storyline, much like Lorwyn past storyline. There's actually some episodes which there's quite a lot going on, and I'm just going to say up top, we love Seanan McGuire. Seanan McGuire did the Phyrexia All-Be-One stories. Is it Phyrexia All-Be-One? Let me triple check that. They did the Murders of Carl of Manor stories, which, whilst the set was a bit iffy, I seem to think.
I remember the story actually being fairly decent.
Yeah,
for a murder mystery. Yeah. Like, it was pretty good, yeah.
But then they also did one of our favourite side stories through Tangles. And Homecoming and Dancing on Death, which are both obviously well received as well. So I think it's safe to say that Seanan McGuire is a good writer, and the thing that I'm going to put at the top here, because we live in a very polarised sort of reactionary world when it comes to media, is that if you like an author or a musician or whatever, and they do something that you don't necessarily enjoy, that is okay.
Yeah, I hated the car. It's not the Arctic Monkeys' fault they decided to get woke. You know.
Arctic Monkey. I don't know if you can say Arctic Monkeys are that woke.
No, I was joking.
Yeah.
I still don't like the car, though. That album can get to fuck.
Yeah, quite. Like, and I think the tone for this episode is going to be, for me anyway, is that there was a lot that needed to be packed into this story for some reason. And I say for some reason because a lot of stories you read where there's a lot of moving parts going on, for example, the build-up to the Phyrexian arc, there's a lot of stories to get through, and that's fine. And then sometimes you read stories that you think, why have they made it more complicated than it needs to be? And I don't know, because I think that's what's happened here. I don't know if it was to do with Seanan's writing, to do with things they were asked to put in the story, as ever, it's unknowable, or a mix of the two. Look, just off the bat, I think this was a bit bloated, this story.
Yeah, like, I did my usual thing of where I bounce around the internet as well, kind of like gathering kind of what the general feel is. And there is a lot of, especially when it got to the end of the story, there's the typical everything felt a little rushed at the end, which I think is inevitable from any Magic story, apart from Edge of Eternities, which somehow still, despite its exceptionally bloated text, not for a bad thing because it was very well written, but even then the end felt very clipped. It felt like it had to all happen and wrap up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things outside of Lorwyn happening in this story, and it feels like there was a pressure to go, right, if we're going to do this story, we also need to get this in, we also need to get this in, we also need to get this in. Shockingly enough, because several of the sets this year aren't going to be set in the Magic universe. So your real estate, your narrative real estate is super precious, and it's under high amounts of pressure to get everything they need in.
See, I hadn't thought about it like that. So because there's literally fewer Magic set stories to keep the narrative arc going, you have to put everything in a finite box.
So instead of doing and this is something that I was planning on talking about further into the episode, but ultimately, because I'll probably go into it a little bit later, but ultimately, if you've got extra story to tell, don't put it in a story that has to exist. Just create an extra story. I know they don't want to spend money on anything.
Yeah.
You know, pre-release stamps.
Oh god, the pre-release stamps.
But the whole point is that if you've got this extra story to tell an extra story. Have this sit on the side. You don't need to have half of it feel like it's edging into the next set and then also carrying over the other set, because it just doesn't give, especially with one block sets, it doesn't give the set or the world enough room to breathe. And for a lot of people, it's been nearly 2 decades since Lowryn last came out. A lot of the people getting exposed to this set have never been to Lowryn before. So they already have to do a lot of catch up of reintroducing the plane to everybody. And then there's also all of this extracurricular narrative, narrative going on that kind of muddies it and pulls focus away from what I'd like, which is just, hey, what's going on Lowryn?
Yeah. I think what we'll do is we'll jump into the narrative breakdown, and then we'll talk as we go. Listeners will remember in days yore when we used to do these story episodes, I used to do like a 10-minute breakdown, and then we'd talk about everything. I think for something like this, it's probably best if we kind of figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
I have thoughts on almost every aspect of this story.
And to be fair, the story does keep switching POVs because there is a group and they do get separated, and then we follow their each individual pathways. So I don't think it's going to feel too wrong for us to kind of pick up each point as it happens, and then we can come back together like the story does with everyone at the end and kind of see how we feel where everything's settled down.
Which is a good narrative structure, because, again, Seanan McGuire is a very accomplished writer that we've enjoyed previously. So, because I can just hear people being like, Seanan McGuire is one of the best Magic writers we've ever had. Agreed.
The writing's
I just don't
great.
know if this story is
the narrative choices I don't necessarily think are their own, and then because of that, it's a bit more glaringly obvious. And despite their best efforts of making the story very coherent, which it is, and it reads well, I think the ultimate view of it and the thing that we see, I think, is a little bit. I don't know how I feel about it.
Oh, and also, just as a little aside before we dive in, I did listen to them as I want to do on the Magic Story podcast episodes going in. As did you initially for the first time?
I did. I think I read the first couple, and then because I needed to have it to be doing other things, I put, I think, episode 3 to 6 on audio, and then I read the last one.
I say without any hint of condescension or sort of like being like, hey, good job, buddy, because that can sound wrong. I actually thought that the Magic Story podcast episodes have maybe suffered in the past for being a bit safe with the author reading things in a very sort of like, this is my voice kind of way. And they've clearly had some notes given to them to change up the voices. And some of them are bizarre choices. Some of them are spot-on choices.
Yeah, Ashling's from Kansas, apparently.
But here's the thing. Even the ones that when I was like, oh, so we're doing like a southern, like, Ashling, like Southern American, like, not South American, but like Southern American Ashling character, I actually really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think that they did very. There was too many voices to not do different voices for everybody. So I'm not. I don't have anything against it.
I liked it. Right, I'm going to be reading this from my phone in the little synopsis that I do. So apologies if it sounds different to my normal speaking voice. Don't know why I can't be asked it like that. Let's get in. On the post-Phyrexian Arcavios, as in Phyrexian Invasion, we join Dina of the College of Winterbloom, who was one of the student signifier characters in the last set of Strixhaven, which is weird because this is a Lowryn story. She is now a postgraduate tutor type thing, and she is accompanying 4 freshman Strixhaven students on a field trip. The Gorgon, Tam, or Tamara. Is it Tamara or Tamala? Tam. Let's just say Tam. Tam's how they're referred to in the story. The Owlin, Abigail, the Vampire, Kirol, and the Goblin, Sanar. It's not particularly story relevant moving forwards, but it's interesting to note that these are so fresh, as in freshman students, they have yet to be fully assigned to their colleges. But it is pretty obvious from the way that they dress in their card artwork and their kind of interests that Tam is looking to be a Quandrix student. Abigail is going to be of the Silver Quill. Kirol looks like they're going to be in Lorehold. And Sanar is absolutely a Prismari, sort of blast mage, if you like. I say it's not particularly important to the story because there's no real bits which like are fully like, oh, this is something a Prismari would do, but it's kind of hinted here and there.
Every now and again, they'll do something that kind of shows like, oh, okay, this is the Power Ranger effect, right? Of where everyone has their own kind of positives, and each one of them demonstrates the magic like that they're kind of more likely to go into, and it also leaves space for a Witherbloom student. I wonder if that's going to get filled by the end of the story, because we're missing our 5th Power Ranger, aren't we?
Oh shit! I didn't even realise. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's for the end of the fucking story. Thank you for explaining the entire narrative to me. My God. During their flower picking task, fuck's sake, I actually can't believe that. During their flower picking task, the group encounter a fairy, not of Arcavios, that leads the group through an omen path to a plane none of them recognise. Lorwyn. So they're following this fairy. They jump through an omen path, which should be a
they fall.
Sorry, they fall through an omen path.
They have that moment in the in Lord of the Rings of where all of the hobbits are running away from Father Briar, whatever his name is, his crops, and they get to the edge, and then they all tumble over together.
Yeah.
But they tumble into a hole that has a big ass omen path in it, which feels very conveniently placed for things that happen randomly.
Sure, but I kind of feel like obviously the fairy, we will find out who they are later, is as a Lorwyn Shadowmoor fairy, is overtly trickstery in nature.
Yeah.
So it's not really a coincidence. They knew the omen path was there. And
yeah. No, I just meant it feels coincidental, like geographically, that the omen path happens to be at the bottom. Or did the omen path create the hole? Who knows what how they affect the world? You know,
I'm kind of fine with that. Yeah. I mean, omen paths in the world of Magic the Gathering are sort of a known quantity at the moment, so it shouldn't be too much of a shock that these things are around.
I guess also if an omen path opens up underground, surely all the ground above it falls into the omen path, right?
Yeah.
So it would create essentially like a sinkhole.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I've answered my.
Imagine one opens up underneath an ocean or something.
By water.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other play just gets completely flooded.
Yeah.
See, this is why omen paths are really cool. We should probably look into them more. Shame we're not gonna.
Or a huge fucking plot hole.
Also that. Yeah.
The group tumble into a meadow with the omen path high in the sky above them, and as Abigail is the only one able to fly as an owlin, the omen path is kind of out of the rest of their reach. As they get their bearings, the group come to a mysterious Dolan gate. As you could probably tell if you have read the stories, I'm rattling through this at an astonishing rate because there is a lot of flowery narrative going on here, so I'm just doing the story beats, right?
Mm-hmm.
As they get their bearings, the group come to a mysterious Dolan gate, which is that kind of Stonehenge-y looking thing, that seems to lead to a night-filled place where they are covered in day. They step through the gate and look for help, only to find themselves in a cave which features a carved relief detailing a story of two large creatures, one of night and one of day. Before they can determine the true meaning, the group come across one of these massive creatures asleep in a stone circle. As Sanar the Goblin approaches the beast almost unwittingly, the creature, that we will know to become Isalu, wakes and exits out of the cave, through the Dolan Gate and into Lorwyn.
So, question here. Initially, I read this as a little goblin guy can't help himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he even says that Isilu is, like, showing up. Is this Isilu or Urdu?
This is Isalu.
Isilu's giving off this kind of, like... It's, you know how I hate to relate to Harry Potter so much for things, but you know when Hermione's talking about the love potion, how it smells for her, like, the things that she loves, like parchment and grass and stuff. Each of the students feels a different feeling, different resonance, based on like what they would consider to be like a warm evening, you know?
Yeah. Well, this is the first hint that we start to get where Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, through Seanan's writing, is representing this, to be honest, very Magic the Gathering idea of what is to be day and what it is to be night. In the same way that white mana isn't good mana and black mana isn't evil mana. Sanar describes Isalu as feeling like that kind of warm autumnal evening, so very Halloween-y, I guess, which to goblins is quite comforting. It's not... Sanar doesn't feel like cold and hollow, as if the tides of the winter has turned or whatever. They feel the positive feelings of like night time. And I think that's a really interesting idea. But yes, that's what draws them to Isalu, because Isalu is the carrier of the dusk.
I was going to say, so my first reading for that, but now I'm thinking about how we know that Oko was messing around. Do you think that Oko was potentially influencing them a little as well?
No, I don't think...
you think it was just literally off their own?
I don't think Oko is quite as overtly powerful as that. I think Oko is very much the Loki sort of trickster thing, where they kind of prompt people into action, but it's like they point them in a direction and let things happen.
It does feel like that moment of like, Peregrine Took just can't help having a little touch, a little fumble.
Yeah. I got a message from my girlfriend who was watching Lord of the Rings on a plane. She hasn't seen it for years, and she messaged me literally going, "I would have left Perry behind at Rivendell." Like, And I had to rage at her and be like, no, he's an integral part of the Fellowship.
Yeah,
And
he
she
does
was like,
eventually redeem himself.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's the moment with the well, and you're like, oh, you fucking.
But
idiot.
she was like, all of the major negative happenings in the first film for the first maybe half an hour of film time after they leave Rivendell. It was Rivendell. Riverdale is a
very different.
Are all his fault? Anyway, whatever. I disagreed. The creature Isilou wakes and exits out the cave through the Dolan Gate and into Lorwyn, bringing with it Shadowmoor, because they bring the nighttime, which gives us a little hint as to what the nature of Urdu and Isilou is. The students are clearly quite bright as well, I sort of read throughout this. So this will come up later in something that I kind of thought was a bit weird. You tell me if your reading on the situation is the same. I thought Strixhaven, when they first presented it, was a school in Arcavios, which was sort of mostly aware of the multiverse, as in everyone kind of, it was like an open secret that this was a thing. So you have the Mystical Archive, and that their role was to bring the brightest and best students into the school.
Well, so before the Omen Pass, only planeswalkers could travel there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
so
but they were aware of that.
So I think the idea was that the bloody hell, what's it called? It's a land, it scries, and it puts instant sorceries into your hand. I can't remember what it's called now. The library. The
Bibliopex.
Thank you. That was essentially almost like a deposit for all of the planeswalkers and all the magic they've learned to put their magic into one big source. So, kind of like the Smithsonian, is the way I look at it.
So that's fine. But would you agree that it was meant to be, it's almost like it's an elite school?
It is hugely elite. I mean, you see that when Luca goes out into the wilds, right?
Yeah,
there is
really poor.
There's a much wider, and it feels like super, super privileged, almost separate from everything else. It's just that now that there are Omen Paths, you can actively go and you can invite people from other planes that do have specific... I mean, especially after the Phyrexian invasion, I imagine that, the faculty is gutted. A lot of the students probably would have been like, fuck this, I don't want to stay in this school anymore. But, yeah, they can essentially pull all of the knowledge and the best and the brightest, as you say, into the school now actively, instead of it just being from random planeswalkers bouncing in and giving their knowledge.
My point is that it's not... they figure out very quickly that there's some sort of day-night cycle with gods, and I feel like that fits because they are all meant to be pretty bright.
Kirill, as they were going down that tunnel, as you said, saw the relief, and it's funny because he's, I think, the cards for them is not inquisitive. It's like it makes them seem like they pay attention to everything, and they do. They're very much the one who sits behind, pays attention to everything, looks at everything, and kind of tries to create an understanding of it. And they're the first person that sees that mural and goes, well, there's clearly... And at first they think it's just representation.
Yeah,
These beasts
not literal.
but it's literal, that these two work in concert. And I think all of these students do seem like
they're pretty switched on.
Even Sanar for a goblin is very, very switched on.
Yeah. They never make decisions which seem stupid.
No.
And as we'll talk about their characterization going forwards, they sort of are very quick to understand the kind of ridiculousness of certain situations.
Yeah.
The group make their way and escape away from Isilou and quickly determine that staying in the daylight patches is essentially safe, whilst the nighttime might be dangerous. As they huddle in one last dwindling shaft of light, they are rescued by a Kithkin that we will learn is Brigid. So Brigid's back, who looks a million years old, despite the fact it's only been 30 years.
We don't know how quick. In the same way that elves age and die quite quickly, I imagine Kithkin potentially, instead of being... I mean, I guess most hobbits don't also live really long lives. It's just Bilbo because of the ring, but... They live longer than humans. We don't know what the average lifespan of a Kithkin is, and also I think we should take how long it's been since things a little bit. I know it says, it mentions it's 40 or something like that.
Yeah, they say in the story it's been a few decades, but you're 100%
But if it's from 30 to 70, I don't. We also don't know how if say Kithkin sort of stay in relative youth up until a certain point and then have a very quick sort of drop off. Look, I'm not saying she's frail and old. I'm saying in her card art she looks like an old woman. But also, if Gold Meadow only ever stays in sun, then you're more likely to get that weathered look, I think that's very funny, if not wildly, not what they're going for. Why aren't Kithkin more tanned,
That's so funny. Wear sunscreen, kids.
UV on Lowryn is a big issue.
Brigid explains that some of the plane's lore to the students, and including the role of Isilou, so we get a bit of exposition. Then Brigid starts taking the group to a Kithkin stronghold for safety, and as they do so, the open path above them actually closes, so they are fully stranded on the plane. When they cut away, we then cut away from the group to the fairy domain of Glenalendra. Is it Glenalendra or Glenalenda?
Glenalendra.
Thank you. I've written it correctly. I always get that wrong when I read the card. where the fairies on both sides of the light are working to make the kingdom suitable for a being who is much larger than a fairy. So we see in Glenlendra that the day and night are sort of coherently working at the same time, and some fairies are kind of only in the darker boundaries and some of them are in the lighter, which must make things logistically fucking nightmarish.
Well, I guess the thing about the fairies, I think they were influenced the least because they're already very trickstery, even as in their Lorwyn selves. So the Shadowmoor self is actually a very small change, and I think they
change colour. That's about
it. They mostly mention it. If you look through even the original block, fairies don't have this big distinction. They just look like various different types of fairy. So I think that out of all of the races, they get changed the least.
We then meet Queen Marilyn, who is a character that we would have seen previously, like Bridget, in the previous Lorwyn stories. This is now no longer Marilyn of the Morn Song. This is Queen Marilyn of the Fairies. She's seemingly an elf but has fairy-like qualities. This Marilyn is not the same as the last one we saw her as, but instead an avatar of the defeated Queen Una.
She is the shell of Marilyn with essentially Una's essence poured into it.
Now, I want to go into it more deeper as we go through, but I'm just going to plant the seed here. This is the first instance where I, as an invested Vorthos, who knows the story of Lorwyn prior but hasn't necessarily read the books, felt that this particular narrative really wants you to remember everything that happened in the last Lorwyn blog. And it's tough.
You have to realise also that Lorwyn had a book, and that book did a lot of... If you think this is... they go here, and then they go there, and then they go back. Like, the Lorwyn story is that, like, to the 10th, to the 11th degree. Like, there is so much changing and switching as well. Obviously, Aisling goes from being the pilgrim to being the extinguisher. There's various different quests, subterfuge, different intentions, and it's the kind of thing of where they try and this is again why I think it's an issue that we're layering over other stories on top of this, is you kind of needed a little bit less expositional backstory, which is the only way they can really push it in. But it does require either you have an understanding or they explain it to you for some of these things to make sense, or at least to try and stay faithful to the original story without then it being like, but why though? And it's like, well, there was a whole reason.
We'll talk about it. I don't want to talk about it now. There's so much story to talk about. The fairies explain to Marilyn that one of their number has gone missing, or seemingly another fairy or some being has taken their place, because they feel that one of their number is missing, but all the signs of that fairy being there, so that's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, someone's sleeping in their bed and the throng is 35 when they usually, but right now it's only 34 or something.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a mystery there that I feel never gets really resolved, but there we go.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like that. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it later.
We then are reintroduced to Marilyn's closest friend, Rhys, who was the main character of the previous Lorwyn stories, ostensibly, although he only got a card in Shadowmoor.
No, they got both.
Oh, you got
Rhys the Exiled and
Rhys redeemed.
Rhys was redeemed, yeah.
Oh, apologies. Yep, you're right. So Rhys is Marilyn's close friend. We learn that Marilyn fears the return of Una, returning through her, because she is her own person, but she worries that she's going to become Una once more, and that at her own request, Rhys is sworn to kill her if there are any signs of that happening. Which brackets there are, because Marilyn is seemingly hearing some mysterious voices in her head.
And she keeps finding Una's petals, like kind of almost shedding off of her. And she's worried that the essence of Una is essentially taking her over.
Marilyn dispatches her fairies to go look for their missing person, and she goes to attend a beast in her courtyard. The beast turns out to be Isalu's other counterpart, Urdu. Now, here is my first massive gripe with this story. Why, oh why, is Urdu and Isalu two separate creatures when the whole conceit of the plane is that it's the same group of inhabitants of the plane that change with the light? Why are they different?
Yeah, I've got a different grumble. My grumble is, if the night wasn't taking over because Isilu was off sleeping in their little cave thing, why was day dominant when Urdu's also dormant and sleeping?
So I think, to answer that one, I think there's probably, if we were to go into a further story, another Dolam Gate where it's like the cave of the day. So I think they probably sleep in these little pocket dimensions and then come out.
So technically Urdu is still out and about. It's just having a little cotch.
Yeah.
Well, so reading through the Legends of Lorwyn article, it does speak of Urdu and Isilu being two halves of the world soul of Lorwyn Shadowmoor. Now, I don't know how I feel about because world souls are something that are very nebulously talked about. We don't really go into it too much. And I think it's one of those things of where that could have been a big focus had we gone more into the Eldrazi side of things instead of doing this whole fucking Avengers multiverse type of, wormhole kind of thing we're doing with the Omen Paths. We could have done something a bit more different and focused on how and what world souls mean, especially when Nis was around. She obviously spoke to Zendakar's world soul, she spoke to Amonkhet's world soul, but the whole point is they felt like they were separate entities, and it's funny that they are manifesting, and I guess maybe Lorwyn, because of the elementals and the primal beyonds and the nature of magic on Lorwyn, might mean that they naturally have to manifest. And this might just be similar to how the Eldrazi were like the fingers or the hands from the main entity. They might exist as a greater entity. The world soul might exist beyond, in the primal beyonds, but it is weird for them to have, as you say, a split duality personality. But it might mean that the system of Lorwyn requires it to have, one person, one bring night and then one bring day. You can't just have one control both. It's like, yeah, that's fine if that was the conceit of the plane. Like, if it was to be like, the world soul manifests all these people into two different versions of themselves that can live concurrently. But even on the cards, and I know obviously the cards never really represent the story as well as they should and vice versa. But, so I just built an Urdu Eastlu deck, I pulled it in my pre-release, and it was something I wanted to do anyway. And on the cards, it has the same mechanic as every other dual-sided change from day to night. Pay to transform, essentially,
in
your main phase.
So it's the same creature. I know the names change, I understand the names change, but like that could just be...
It's one creature card.
It's one creature card, and it's like, so I was convinced, having seen the creature card and understood what Lorwyn was and what their role was before reading the story, as soon as we saw it in the cave, I was like, that's going to go out the cave and become Isilú.
Yeah,
right?
It didn't.
Or Urdu, right?
Two separate entities, yeah. I think it's also, because they don't in the end, right? They don't actually merge into one either.
No, they fuck off to their halves.
Yeah, they just kind of create like, sorry, we're kind of skipping towards the end a little bit here, but it's funny that then, I expected by the end the two merged and they go, right, okay, let's no longer have this one or the other.
Yeah.
Let's have it so that we are combined. But then
let's have it like every other plane in existence where we just have day and night.
And it could fall in a more regular pace, because they say that certain... there's a point where I can't remember if it's Morkan or someone else.
They say 6 months.
6 months until it's due. How the fuck do you know? It hasn't been that long, right? Since Una 30 years, so maybe there's a regularity to it.
My gripe with this Urdu Eastlu thing sets a real precedent for the rest of the story, where a lot of my grumbles about Lorwyn in general, not just this story, is that I don't, and I don't think anyone knows, including the world building team, I don't understand how this plane works. I don't think anyone does.
Yeah.
Because okay, so let's just talk about the Morkan thing now, because we'll bring it back up again. You're right. She says it's 6 months until Isilú comes and does the thing, right? And there are so many points in this story that I will fucking point out where a character goes, the other half of ourselves does not know what we know. It's almost like we are two separate people.
Don't carry
Memories
over.
Get wiped.
For the average denizen.
For most of them.
There are some
there should be exceptions for rules, but the idea is that if I'm Andy and I live in Lorwyn, the Andy of Shadowmoor shares a body, but even the wounds disappear.
It's very much a split. It's very much a split personality.
Yeah. You live two different lives that are meant to represent maybe two halves of your personality, broadly speaking. So how does anyone fucking know anything? How does anyone understand how the plane works? How does anyone understand the nature of their true selves?
So it's funny because the biggest issue I had with this story is it makes Lorwyn feel super twee, almost silly in the fact that it's like, these random, like, fairy tale creatures are just bumbling around going, ooh, this is how the plane works. And all it takes is students to come in and go, well, this is all a bit fucked, isn't it?
Well, so that's actually, I think you and I were talking when we were at Monday Magic the other day, and we did sort of, like, have a little pre-podcast discussion, which we don't usually do, to be fair. And one of the things that I said to you that I actually really appreciate about this story is exactly that. I usually don't like media where it's like kids on bikes, like children are smarter than the adults, or like high school matters to everybody. I usually find that stuff revolting, right? In this story, I'm the total opposite. I really love how Sanar specifically, Kirol a little bit as well, tends to call out a lot of these characters, because there'll be some really dramatic Shakespearean thing where one of the characters will be espousing Law of the Plane, and Sanar just goes, I don't know what any of that means. I would just quite like to go home now. And you're like, fucking right.
And it's kind of funny because normally this used to be the thing from the Planeswalkers, right? Having this objectivity.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that this is almost subjective objectivity of where these kids are stuck in this plane, but because they're not from this plane, they can have that wider look and go, well, all of this seems a little bit ridiculous. And it kind of works that certain planes probably shouldn't be linked to the greater multiverse because they're so idiosyncratic of themselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't work when other people observe them because everyone else just looks and goes, well, that's ridiculous. And they can turn around and go, well, this is how our entire world works. It's not really for you to have an opinion on, but with everything interacting, and there was mention, I think Bridget mentioned that there have been foreigners that keep coming in. There are some that join Wonderwine or the Shadowmoor version of the Merrows and join their crews and things like that. But it only happens every now and again.
Yeah.
But it's one of those planes of where it doesn't feel like it interacts with the greater multiverse very well. And it's really obvious when you have all these students keep looking at things going, but this is kind of ridiculous. And you go, yeah, because you shouldn't have the layering. It shouldn't exist within, and on top of it should exist as an isolated thing. And as you say, because the writers don't seem to know really exactly how everything works. When they're trying to do the thing, the Harry Potter thing of where this person knows nothing about this world, so everything has to be explained to them, and you as the reader get to have piggyback on that and have everything explained to you. You get it explained to you and you go, yeah, that's a bit silly though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit silly.
Yeah, interesting. I'm reading a lot of Terry Pratchett at the moment, which I've never read before. I'm already 5 books deep. I'm doing it in the publication order for anyone who's keeping track. I'm sure some people will be aghast.
Some people say that you shouldn't, yeah.
Terry Pratchett says that you shouldn't. He says that the Colour of Magic and The Light of Fantastic are not great novels, and you should only come back to them once you've sort of like settled into his world.
Yeah.
I've read it publication order or whatever, and because that is like the Discworld is, so I'm going to use it as a completely different fantasy IP that I feel has good writing, right? Because the Discworld is such a realised place in Terry Pratchett's head, including the things that he doesn't know as he's writing, and will in the book call out things like, I don't draw a map, so you can draw one yourself. But so when the characters don't know something and they're finding it out about their own existence, they're not finding it out from a point of like they're finding it out from within. Whereas I think sometimes if you have characters that have to constantly find out from without, like they're external to the place, it does sometimes feel like, well, maybe this plane is just a bit silly.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for like multiversal media kind of it has to pansy around this. No one really fully sits on the fact of like how absurd it is that these two very different things are together. It's all just kind of like you have to move past it because we haven't got enough time to go through so how does this work where you come from, and how does this work where you come from? There's no time for that, you know. You have to kind of just assume that everyone's okay with it. But there are certain planes like this one where everyone just being okay with it seems ridiculous. Like there's a moment where Kirill's talking to Lowryn about how they don't have feet, they have hooves.
Yeah.
And obviously Kirill wears shoes, and then Lowryn doesn't understand because it's like, well, we don't have shoes because I've got hooves, and it's like, and there's a whole like, and that's kind of cute. But that should be happening for everything. But there isn't enough time for that to happen. So then when it does get called out by people like Sana, again, it just comes back to it does feel a little silly because it's like, well, you should be looking at absolutely everything through that lens.
Which is, and look, we're half an hour into the record and we're not even the first episode, so we'll have to move on. But the last thing I'll say on it is, again, a little bit contradictory to how I usually feel about these things. This really has flipped a lot of my perceptions on my head. There's a seriousness which the Lorwyn and Shadowmoor characters take about their own world, where I feel actually that this whole story could have benefited from things being a little bit more Pratchett-like. And again, that could be influenced because I'm reading Pratchett at the moment. But even the marketing for Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, excellent marketing from Wizards, where they have the Jim Henson puppets, which look straight out of Labyrinth, or the Dark Crystal, which again is a world that it has influenced. They've open about that in their world building team articles. Has influenced the Shadowmoor Lowryn. Having things be a little bit more self-aware as to how silly everything is could have maybe made everything a bit more smooth. Yeah. But having these characters be so life and death, and we're coming up to a sequence soon with Bridget, which we'll get to, which is truly horrifying, and it seems horrifying in a way that's like, okay, it's good horror writing, but also seems like, holy fuck, can we calm down, please? Like, you know.
Yeah. And then it also then creates questions in the other direction, right? Like, why is it that people from this plane, when they go to other planes, they're not affected by because clearly there's something in the aurora between that creates that change.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's the character where that really matters for them leaving the plane.
Yeah, let's get to that later.
Wait to it,
yeah, cool.
Because that's going to be a biggie for me. Anyway, Christ, we're in episode 1 still. We then cut to Strixhaven, back to Strixhaven, where Liliana is in her chambers and being visited by the planeswalker Ajani Goldmane. He has arrived to tell Liliana of Jace's seeming death, though she doesn't believe it. And
Nor should she.
No, because she's fucking clever and Ajani is an idiot.
It's also funny though, right? Because Ajani was there and could very much be like, his entire existence was
illusion.
torn apart.
Yeah.
And then she's like, nah, mate. And it's like, yeah, she's
Well,
right.
okay, right, okay.
But the reality is, who is she to say no?
I see the read completely differently. Ajani should know, being like, well, Jace is like a blue mind mage and deals in reality and perception. I sort of think he's fine.
Yeah, fair. I just think if I was in that moment of the meditation realm where literally like it's being what's it when you have the incursions in Marvel when everything's just blooping out of existence, I'm like, that seems like a pretty big, like, even if they're not dead, they're not really alive anymore.
Maybe,
you know,
maybe Ajani should have just gone like, motherfucker, I was there.
Yeah, exactly.
anyway, he's arrived to tell Jace's death and also about Jace's deception about the true fate of Nico Bolas after the events of War of the Spark, which really fucking matters to Liliana.
That is huge, and it's just tucked. Why isn't this a whole fucking story?
They could have done a whole bottle episode where Ajani and Liliana have like a chat about the existence of this whole thing.
And then there's the weirdest thing of this, and that's, I guess the point is that, and it doesn't explicitly state that she doesn't have her spark, and I think there might be some faculty obligations that mean that she can't just go, okay, here I go, and obviously we've not seen a card of her since. So there's no, I don't think it says it specifically in the story, but we know that Ajani absolutely is a planeswalker, so then he blips off to Lorwyn.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like from this point onwards, as much as it's great to have this gallivanting, fucking healing lion monster machine thing that does everything you need him to do in the story, he's a fighter and he's a healer, he's scary, he's also caring.
Yeah.
I think the story probably would have benefited instead from having Liliana go on this journey instead of Ajani.
Yes, I agree. That is interesting you talk about that because, as we talk through the story, Ajani very much is there as the kind of deus machina of the group, which is, I think, I don't hate it, but what I find very interesting is that we've spent 30... Magic's 30 years old now, isn't it, roughly?
About 20 years with
So
Planeswalkers.
we spent about 20 years with Planeswalkers, and for that entire 20 years, they have been lesser or greater gods.
Yeah.
But they didn't seem it as much in later years because they were our main characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now that
and they all had to be nerfed.
Yeah, now that they're not our main characters, when they do come into the storyline, they just fucking hose.
Which I kind of...
Which is what they should be.
I'm not against
I actually kind of like it.
Yeah, I think the issue I have with that is we've got two different characters who are both going, I'm apologising for all the bad things that I've done. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it, well done, wonderful. But then the arc of good self, bad self is going to be really important to Liliana at the end of this story.
We will get
and I feel like if it wasn't Ajani, it was Liliana, I don't think anything changes in the story, but I think it would have had greater weight if it had been Liliana who went.
I agree. Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, Dina arrives to explain the situation with the students to Liliana. Don't have to go into it, but it's interesting that she calls her Professor Vess and not Professor Ronix.
Yeah.
No longer.
So she's essentially gone, this is who I am, I can settle back down again.
Back with the group, Bridget takes them to Goldmeadow and starts questioning them about their intentions on the plane. So there's Bridget's kind of attitude switches in like a paragraph where she accuses them of like, what lies are you going to tell me? And it's like, oh, all right, Bridget, fucking calm down, mate. Like,
yeah,
it's a little bit of flash of Shadowmoor Kithkin because that's the point, right?
It's the yin yang. There's a little bit of each in both.
So yeah, having like aspects of the two sides of things in the other world is kind of cute.
Yeah, I think it would be too much of a conceit to be like pure good, pure bad.
Yeah. The students explain their events up until this point, which Bridget sort of believes as much as she can. And Eastlew arrives, unfortunately, and brings with them the night. This is the horror show I was talking about. This pulls Goldmeadow into a Shadowmoor Lorwyn civil war between the two halves of the Kithkin.
Yeah.
And it's like Shadowmoor Kithkin ripping Lorwyn Kithkin into the night.
It's zombies without being zombies, essentially.
But it's like...
Because then as soon as they grab them, put them to the shadow, they become one of them.
Oh, Christ. Bridget sort of like... panically it's like she's been infected by the zombie virus and she's like screaming at them to get away.
When she's telling us like, right, if I tell you to come back, do not listen.
Oh, it's horrifying.
The me that asks you to come back is not me.
And she does change. So
and this will be the first time that she has changed.
She mentioned it before that she had.
Yeah, because she has a crescent from the I can't remember if she gets it from the source or either way she gets it from the mirrors, and it essentially allows her to not be affected by the Aurora during the original story.
Yeah.
So we assume that between the original story and now, she hasn't had to interact with the Shadowmoor side of things because there is a typical cycle that hasn't been Also, how is it that just a random student from another world uproots your world soul, you know? I know that they go like...
Well, they explain it later on a bit, but I have questions about that.
I still feel like it's too much of an influence, but whatever. Yeah. But yeah, this is the first time that she's ever had to move over, and for her, that would be mean losing your memories for the first time in decades, becoming someone you've probably haven't been before in God knows how long. Who knows how much that version of her will not want to change back because they haven't been able to be that version of them for so long.
The whole sequence is pretty horrifying.
This is something that I think we could have it should have gone into a little bit more, and you could have actually had a whole chapter that was almost like written like an Innistrad style kind of horror story. But instead we kind of have to treat it a little bit like, okay, cool, that's happening, off you go.
Yeah. Before she turns, Bridget tells the group to flee and to find Marilyn, who can help and restore Eastleigh to their sleep. So she kind of gives them this idea that there's a fairy queen around who could potentially help restore the balance.
I don't understand why they think that, because from what we see, Marilyn has
no grip on anything.
No power of any kind of variety.
Yeah, fair enough. I suppose she is at the centre of it, though, because, as you say, Glenalendra is almost unaffected by everything.
Yeah.
So the group then head off to Glenalendra, although they don't quite know the way. They get told to follow the Wonderwine River and look for the tributary. They say the word tributary about 500 times.
Yeah. Well, there's another word that gets said 500 times that we'll get to eventually.
But along with the way, Kirill is snatched by an elf. He just gets fucking picked. They, because they are non-binary, they get picked out of the fucking group.
Yeah, because they're doing their thing of they're just looking around going, well, isn't this nice? I think there's even a moment of where Abigail has to... Also, Abigail, and she flies.
Abigail flies, yeah.
That's cute. So she flies them one by one over the river to start walking into the woods. And because Tam and Kirill are just like absolute nerds, they just start just talking about the fauna and everything. And it's like it only takes like 10 seconds before they're like in depth talking about something completely not unrelated, but... And it's kind of funny that they go into this because it shows that they are keen-eyed students, and it kind of keeps placing this thing on Kirill of being very observant. But it does come to the detriment of they started streaking ahead, so then they fall behind, and all it takes is one person to fall behind before Llewellyn nabs them.
So there's also, just to touch on maybe a little bit of characterization of some of these students, this is also maybe the sort of second or third time that they've had to flee some dangerous situation. And you see a bit of a group dynamic, which I think is a very subtle and well-played thing, to my mind, is that they point out a little bit throughout the story that whilst they are classmates, because they're so fresh to the school, they're not really fast friends yet. And there's a little bit of self-preservation going on. There's also a little bit of like boundary pushing going on. So something we've not mentioned is that Abigail is deaf and has to sign. It basically uses sign language, which the other students understand, which is kind of cool.
Well, it's sign language through a device that one of the Silver Quill students designed that allows them to speak telepathically.
Yeah.
So, and it reads other people's... They even say, like, that's a very fancy tool that you've got there. Yeah. But it's basically like the universal translator from Doctor Who.
Yeah, but she can't hear anything.
Unless it's this very, very loud sound, which then triggers the explosion alarm kind of thing. Yeah, or like
feels vibrations.
Exactly,
So she's not able to hear Kirill get snatched. And also the fact that Kirill darted off really quickly with their vampire speed and then got tired and fell back is another thing where like they were all just kind of running for their own lives and not for each other, which is kind of interesting. Oh, you speak about universal translators. Small little gripe that I'm going to go just to double back. There's a point which Bridget says about the Phyrexian invasion. She uses a word, the Inial Inasag, which sounds very Celtic-y, and then one of the nerdy students goes...
I think it's Kirill who goes, you mean the Medal Invasion?
And then Bridget goes, oh yeah, that's what the Boggarts call it. Now, little gripe, little aside, because you're right there about the universal translator thing. If we're accepting that pretty much every plane in the multiverse speaks this common language...
Has to, otherwise none of this makes any sense.
Right. Those individual times where they use a plain language-specific word, that then the other people go, do you mean this? Then they go, yeah! You're like, why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother?
Someone used the word cliche in their language once, and I went, whoa, 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 whoa. Why are they using French? I know that...
You can start going down that rabbit hole.
But you know what I mean? It's like, it was very obvious to me, because I was like, you're using a non-English word.
Yeah.
Which I understand you could then say, why they speak in German. It was very interesting that they did a language other than English, when English was set as that's what everyone speaks. And it took me very out of the story.
It's the same gripe that everyone has with Star Trek, and even Trekkies go, the universal translator in the world of Star Trek is it's surgically implanted into most species, and the ones that don't will have it, or the ones that don't rely on universal translators that are part of like the design of buildings.
Yeah, sure.
So that if an alien species comes aboard that you've never learned before, the AI computer will translate their shit for you, right? And there's a couple of times where that doesn't work, but those are the exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, because I guess we didn't even come across that in Edge, where Edge of Eternities probably should have brought that up, considering.
There are points in the story, and it seems to only ever be Klingon language. I don't know why, but Klingons will say Klingon words.
But they won't be translators.
And people will go, what does that mean? It's like, why do you even know that they're saying the Klingon word? How does that even work?
It's
do
when
you
they
have to trick the universal translator?
When you have to yada yada something to the point of where it goes, we really can't think about this even for a second because it all falls
apart. There are some characters who learn how to speak Klingon, and you're like, what? What are you learning?
Why?
Yeah, you should pick up a fucking book and go, I don't know.
You have to turn off the translator to hear it as a different language, right?
Like someone says, the word for cat in Klingon is cat. And you're like, well, this is fucking impossible. I can't, I don't know what they just fucking said. Yeah. How does it do the lip movements? Whatever. Anyway, it really
This is why it could be really good to have, when the Omen Path arc, just a separate from all of the other plane stories, just an Omen Path arc story where it just goes over some of these things and just gives just a little bit.
Or like Niv Mizzet's giving Raul Zarek's giving a lecture to the rest of the Is It about how Omen Paths work.
Yeah. Or maybe when we did the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, we could have had an after story where it talked about how like they found a device that can project this through the Omen Pass to have like an effect. I mean, it'd be very powerful, but you could at least try and explain it a little bit instead of ignoring it entirely and just going, cool. Because then moments like this come up and you go, but surely
they should have just heard Metal Invasion.
Yeah. Because I guess, are they saying that the different races on the same plane can't understand each other, but someone else from a different plane can understand all of them?
Anyway. Yes, the elf hunter who took Kirill away is called Lowryn, or Lowryn, if you want to be fake Welsh about it. Llewellyn wants to know why Isilou has been awakened and interrogates Kirill, because he's aware that the students are the ones who woke him up.
And it's funny, every time the students are just like, yeah, that was us.
But like,
fine. And no one has a massive go at them about it.
Because they know, but they're smart enough to know if they try and lie, they're not fighters, they're just going to get fucking killed. Eventually, Llewellyn decides to take Kirill to go and see the elf leader, the High Perfect Morcant. That might be one of the thirstiest card arts that's ever been produced in modern Magic. Which
is funny because then the story after, so we got card spoilers in each of these stories, or not most of them, at least. And then the High Perfect Morcant one, in the next story, it has her like bitter dismissal or something.
Oh, she looks like all haggard and shit.
It is super unflattering, and I'm like, I get that you can reinterpret a character and what they look like, and maybe in this moment her features distort or whatever, but this person is supposed to look so perfect.
Yeah.
And yet you've made them look ugly, and that shouldn't be. I don't think that should be possible.
Do you know what it wrote
or
to
allowed?
Me? Before I read the story, and I saw that card art, I assumed that was her in Shadow.
Right.
I think that was the art direction.
Well, there's a lot of the art direction not meeting up with the cards, right? There's multiple mentions.
I think the story might have changed where they kind of made some characters not succumb to Shadowmoor, but card arts had already been drawn.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of. I think the same thing with the Isilou and Urdu, of where there's a few times where features that definitely aren't on.
Yeah.
Like their eyes open. It's like doesn't have a head. How can their eyes open? Things like that. Yeah, it just doesn't work.
The pair arrive at Lisalan, which is the elf stronghold, where Kirill is presented to High Perfect Morcant. Kirill explains that to Morcant their adventures so far. There are so many points where they explain what's happened. It's just exposition dump every time.
So my one is if I have to read "shouldn't be here" one more time, every single character, apart from Abigail because they don't talk, says it multiple times. We shouldn't be here, and I know it.
Even be working today.
And I think like the repetition of it works. It does keep this in mind of like that's their main thing of like we just don't want to be here anymore. But the amount of times I read it, because I read these stories quite quickly back to back today and yesterday. Like I've read it must have been about 7 times. I was like, yeah, we get it. Everyone knows you're not from here.
I'm just going to read a little passage of Kirill meeting Morcant for the first time. Kirill took several steps into the chamber without intending it, eyes fixed on the woman. She was tall and beautifully rounded, with a symmetrical build that they could have admired all day. Her hooves were larger and sharper than Llewellyn's, polished and gilded in gold, and her horns were breathtaking. So large that it seemed they must be too much for her long, elegant neck to support, their tips bending out and then spiralling inward, like the emulation of a crown. They too were tipped in gold, and as the sunlight through the window struck her, she gleamed. Now that is a fucking description of an elf queen.
That's thirsty, yeah.
Very cool. Well done, Jordan. That's Perfect.
Step on me, queen, with your hooves.
I mean, that card artwork is very much like,
well-rounded as well. It's like,
Yeah.
And the artwork,
very
for
cool.
once, absolutely follows that.
Well, I think there are sometimes grumbles about like what isn't acceptable on card art and the boundaries of such things and like who's being represented and who isn't. But I think this set definitely gave everyone a little bit of something.
There's a bit thick here. Yeah.
I mean, those Oko card arts are outrageous. Anyway, Morkant's read on the situation is that Islalu must be weakened because they are awoken 6 months early, and Morkant's whole motivation is that the elves should stay in the Lorwyn side. So if they kill Islalu, the daytime will reign supreme.
Because they become like uggers, in the Shadowmoor, and they can't. That makes them gross and ill.
So now we have the setup where we've got our first faction's proper motivations. The elves are looking to kill Islalu to bring about eternal daylight.
It's kind of funny
because a nice flip around, because usually it's like vampires doing eternal night.
Yeah, I mean, I think the elves have always been known to be the active like antagonists in this in Lorwyn Shadowmoor, and it's also kind of funny. We don't really see many, apart from the mention towards the end with the battle and everything. We only really see Lewin and Morkan, and it kind of makes it feel like, and I know that they're severely diminished after the Phyrexian invasion, and that's why it says, there's a moment, I don't know if you're going to mention it, there's a mention of her saying like, maybe the empire of the elves can rise again.
Oh, interesting.
And Kirill's just like, yeah, so I shouldn't be here. And I don't think I should be involved in any empires rising, because I definitely have no idea about any of what you're talking about.
And like, I totally get what you mean about that seems to be their only like record that they play, and they play it again and again. But
it's true, because they keep trying to involve them in things that really aren't their shit.
It feeds into that slight thing where it is just a bunch of students going
just
like,
want to go home, mate.
Just want to go home?
Really want to go home,
There's a point later on, I'm not going to mention it as its own thing, but there's a point later on where even in the thick of battle, Tam just goes, I just want to go back and finish our project. I really just want to finish our project.
I think they even say, it's like, I want to go and... Yeah, and it's like, I can't believe that I hate it here. It's making me want to go and do homework. It's so funny.
Very good. Meanwhile, the students of the group realise that Kirill has gone. Fucking well done, guys.
Yeah. How long did it take you to do that?
25 minutes. Like, oh shit, one of our 4 party members isn't here. The group rush to find them, but encounter a forest beast instead. And after the ensuing skirmish, Abigail is knocked into a river, which is fucking not great for a bird folk.
Nope.
And
she ain't no duck. She ain't no fucking duck.
She ain't no fucking duck, mate. She ain't got no swim bladder. She sinks.
Very much so.
Fucking sinks. However, being a fucking awesome, sick, I'm at an elite magic school kind of person, she is able to create an air bubble to breathe. She
does the Doctor Strange thing of where she goes, fingers.
Finger tap.
And it even mentions, like, hey, a lot of spells need words. Thankfully, Abigail's don't, and she can kind of do it anywhere.
Fucking sick.
Yeah, very cool.
Look, there's going to be a couple of things I say about people's lived experience that I don't share. I'm going to say this in a positive way. And, like, if anyone listening thinks it's condescending, please let me know. However, I fucking love the representation of Abigail's disability in this set, or in the story, because there are times where they don't sugarcoat it. It's a full-on fucking disadvantage. Some of the creatures on Lorwyn don't like the fact that she uses telepathy, essentially, like the Kithkin. Some of the situations means that she can't hear danger, so she gets knocked out of it.
Well, this is exactly what happened here in this moment.
And then in some moments, it's not that, disabilities are really a superpower, which in itself is condescending as shit. However, it shows a real character moment where someone is able to approach a situation in a different way because of their lived experience.
I think anyone else in this circumstance dies because they can't cast it. It's just, it's very clever. They go, the thing that should be holding me back is actually the thing that I can now play to my advantage that keeps me alive.
Yeah.
Showing that it's not really a disability, it's just a different way of doing things,
Very cool. So she's able to create an air bubble to breathe underwater. So she's got this little air bubble helmet. And before long, she meets a group of merfolk in the river who take her away and try to help her. And then that's kind of the last we see of her for like 2 or 3 story episodes.
And then it's quite, because they're the ones who say, oh, that tool's really cool. Because as you say, the Kithkin Bridget didn't like her interacting in her mind because she was like, well, I'm not even part of the thought weft, so don't get involved in my in my thoughts. But the Merrows are like, well, that's nifty, isn't it? We can talk to each other. We wouldn't otherwise because we're underwater, which is something you wouldn't think about because voice doesn't carry underwater.
That packages.
Yes, people can't understand the difference between flat 1B and 1-2B.
Yeah.
Which I get is mildly difficult, but like it literally says 1B everywhere and it's saying 2B, so fuck off.
Cool. Tam and Sanar arrive at Glenalendra, just the fucking 2 of them, and are immediately captured and brought to Marilyn. The group explain once again their quest.
We're not from here. We shouldn't be here.
But Rhys bursts in with the blue fairy from earlier, the one who tricked them into the Omen Path, and who has apparently told Rhys the secret of Marilyn's mind voices. Rhys tries to fulfill his vow of killing Marilyn, as both believe this to be a sign of Una's return. However, the fight leads to Rhys falling out of a window because he slips on one of her petals.
Quandrix, potential magic. Tam manages to manipulate things for him to go, slip on one pedal, fall out of a window.
Right. Geometry and probability.
That scene must have been hilarious. Rhys must have been like, what the fuck is going on right now?
I literally was the main character last time.
I am so graceful. Out the window. Defenestrated.
He falls out of a window, allowing Marilyn to escape with Tam and Sanar, and the fairy who goes in tow. Why the fuck this fairy is still allowed to go with them?
The thing is, the fairy doesn't make a lot of sense as you're reading it. You're like, okay, there's going to be some reasoning behind it. When you find the reason, it makes even less sense, everything that they're doing. Yeah. Also, fucking use your words. For the longest time, I was like, so sorry to bury the hatchet. It's Oko. But Oko can speak.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole time with the fairy, I'm like, can he just not speak as a fairy? And then he speaks as a fairy later on. I'm like, why the conceit? Use your words.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Why did he trick the students into the Omen Path?
Everything about this is wrong. He justifies it, and it is not justified properly. I don't agree with it.
we will get there. Tam and Sanar and the fairy as they try to calm Islu and restore balance. So we have the elves trying to kill Islu, Marilyn, and ostensibly the fairies and the students are trying to calm Islu, right? These are the two motivations going on. The group use a boat to escape down the river, a la Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and Marilyn takes them to an ally, the Flame King, Aisling.
Hey y'all!
Hey y'all, Aisling's back in the house. Aisling, I've got my boss is from South Carolina, and I think I'd get fired if she heard me say that. Yeah, Aisling takes the group to a Bogart hideout to rest. So you see the Bogarts, they don't really have a story impact, but they're there.
No, I think there is a side story with them, so if you want more goblin stuff, you got goblins.
The group explains their quest again. We shouldn't even be here!
Yeah, I just want to go home!
Aisling informs them that of Morkant's plan to kill Islu, so now they know that the elves are on the warpath, and they resolve to stop them.
Oh, I want to say one thing quickly. Apparently, Aisling, according to Marilyn, just goes up and down the Wonderwine talking stories, because Aisling doesn't change, and I don't know if it's all, I think it's all Flamekin. The Flamekin into Rhymekin, they maintain their personalities. If you don't want to maintain your personality and come to terms with it, you turn into a Cinder. So Cinders and Rhymekin both exist as an alternate form of the Flamekin. It's just one of them is essentially given up on themselves and burns out, and the other one has this almost like inward solidarity, which is what burns it in, which turns it inwards and makes them go cold. But essentially, Aisling in Shadowmoor and Lorwyn still contains her memories, which is why she goes up and down the Wonderwine, telling stories, giving information,
which is kind of cool.
Great.
I think when you first saw that card, I remember you having like a real problem with it. I kind of feel like this is sort of fine.
I really liked Cinders, and I know I understand why you couldn't have her become the Extinguisher again. But I also thought it was just a bit twee to go, oh, well, what's the opposite of fire? Oh, ice. And I just don't like the red-blue contrast so much. I think it's a little bit overdone. But for me, it was also just funny that Marilyn's like, oh, we'll go here because hopefully Aisling's there. And you find out that Aisling's just been running up and down what I assume is a several kilometre, maybe even longer river.
Lowryn,
so fucking lucky that she happens to be there. It's not even like they have to wait for her. Like they go to the riverbank, the boat goes up, and then she literally just reaches over and just pulls Marilyn out as if like the stars had aligned.
Yeah. There's a moment which Sanar, when he first meets Aisling, goes, "Whoa," said Sanar, scrambling out of the coracle and staring at Aisling. "You're beautiful." "Sanar," hissed Tam. "What? She is. Fire is always pretty, but letting fire to decide to be a person is a special sort of pretty."
What a line.
Game.
And then the thing is, then Tam goes on to be like, before Tam could explain to him why that's not a smart thing to say. Now, there's something to be said of where you shouldn't comment on people's looks in any way, shape or form, but I don't understand how telling someone you're beautiful could be... I mean, maybe you have to like consider that maybe they don't consider themselves to be beautiful and it might make them feel shame or whatever, but it's like, I think calling someone beautiful should be a universally positive thing.
I think in this line, in this instance...
It's not important, it shouldn't be the thing, right?
The writing is a very deliberately... Sanar immediately explains that he loves fire, and fire is beautiful, and that the line of when fire decides to be a person, not to be too high-minded and fucking like, whatever you want to accuse me of being, but the fact that he's commenting on the personage of fire being a person, and less about like, want to shag love. Like, it's not that line.
And I guess it's also, if you're talking about a person in front of the person, that's also like a faux pas, but yeah.
Yeah. Again,
I think Sanar. I love Sanar.
I think Sanar's I usually don't like goblin characters. I fucking love Sanar. I think they're great.
He's nearly up there with Breaches.
I can't. Sorry, Breachers fans. I can't. Breachers sucks.
Active retching. Hilarious.
God. Anyway. Wherever I lost my place. The group uses a boat, blah, blah, blah. Right. At that moment, Ajani arrives on the plane and is immediately attacked by several night and day creatures, which alerts him to the fact that something is not quite right. Because he's been to Lorwyn before.
And he can sense that they're scared and angry and things. He's like, even though I've never met this weird flower boar thing, I can tell that they're not okay right now.
Yeah. Fine, whatever. He's from Naya. He knows about nature and shit.
Yeah.
Morkant, Aisling, Sanar, and Tam head off to stop Morkant. Marilyn explains more about her creation from Una and explains that she had a brother intended to rule Shadowmoor and that she would rule Lowryn, but he disappeared a long time ago. The group reach the light boundary and head into the night side, using Aisling's power to not change with the light. So there's a conceit that's kind of introduced here where elementals from Lorwyn, sunlight elementals,
have like an aura.
They kind of
them.
like protect them because they emit light and energy. Fine, I sort of think that's fine. It's a bit like sort of.
Well, Marilyn is unaffected
convenient.
anyway. I think the only thing it's here to do is to ensure that Oko doesn't change back to a form that Marilyn recognises.
Oh, that's a good point.
So otherwise, in the story, that would be the
You're
point.
pretty good at this. You're good at an analysis.
I have literally just reread the entire story, so like it's very fresh in my mind.
I'm learning a lot from you right now. Cool. Meanwhile, Kirol is charged by Morkant on retrieving the Dawn Glove flower from Shadowmoor.
Because they also let slip that they don't change in the shift, and the place where the Dawn Glove grows is in Shadowmoor, and the elves hate being their Shadowmoor selves, and maybe rightfully so for them because they're super fucking high and mighty on themselves. But Kirol essentially is a great guinea pig bit of fodder to go and throw and do their bidding.
The idea is that the Dawn Glove flower can be distilled into a poison that could potentially kill Isilou because it's a Knight of Shadowmoor. It's it's the flower. It's the poisonous flower of Shadowmoor.
Matter antimatter kind of thing, right?
You have Dawn Glove flowers in Shadowmoor and Moon Glove flowers in Lorwyn, and they're the antithesis of each other, which will all become relevant. Kirol does so of also avoiding more cinders, but when Morkant orders them to go get more, they refuse, and are surprisingly backed by Llewellyn, who is now also disobeying Morkant. So for some reason, and we're not quite sure why, that Llewellyn, who was completely deferential to Morkant previously, is now sort of like, no, that's not fair, you shouldn't send them to go back in.
I think it's one of those situations of where you don't see the wood for the trees when you're in the forest, and then Kirol's kind of given them a look of like,
oh sure,
a way of going, maybe I look at the things outside of mine, and also if Lewin wasn't happy.
Yeah, it's not Llewellyn, sorry, it's Lewin.
No, it's like Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen. It's
very good. That's a changing room.
It is very much.
If anyone knows what changing rooms is,
I don't think you American listeners are going to know.
Anyway,
but it's one of those things of where when once your eyes are opened, it's hard to shut them, and I think they've seen that there's a potential outside of the Elven court, and obviously I think a lot of people defer to Morkant because they have to, because she's the queen, but I think a lot of them would do so in a disgruntled fashion. As much as supporting elfdom for elfdom, in spite of everything else, is good for the elves, they probably have a little bit, because they're also young. Like, I don't think it's ever mentioned, but they're probably about the same kind of age as all of the students. Especially towards the end, well, they end up, spoilers, they end up going back to the school with them. But I think the idea is that because they're young, they're more easily influenced by outside ideas, and so they don't have to sit within the norm.
Before things get too heated between Morkant, Lewin, fuck's sake, and Kirol, Ajani turns up and Derek's Machinas them away out of Morkant's reach. Back to Marilyn's party, and now Rhymekin Aisling are suddenly set upon by Isilou and a band of Kithkin. Before they are taken, Marilyn suddenly recognises the fairy causing all the issues throughout the story as her long-lost brother. So now that they're in Shadowmoor, she kind of goes, oh, I do know this fairy.
Because he switches from blue to green. They keep making this mention wherever he switches, and each time he's either like happy that he's the other one, or he's kind of disgruntled that he's had to change back.
Yeah. There's I can't remember where in the point of the story is. There's a point where he's flittering between the two lights in like.
Yeah, so it's like a strobe effect.
So he's like, blue.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
As she realises this bit of information, a group of elves arrive, which we will later realise is the Morkant group, to challenge the Kithkins. As tension rises, the groups are surprised to see Isilou circling to protect them and the Kithkin. I didn't necessarily understand the sort of the surprise of the group going, oh, Isilou's protecting us, because they haven't really done anything.
I guess the idea is if something is like a force of nature, you're surprised that it actually has like personality.
Yeah.
And I think the point was that they mentioned that Morcount wants to try and kill him or injure him, and it goes goes, oh, well, in that case, fuck them and I'll protect you.
Yeah.
You know, because you're clearly you're on my side, whereas these are obviously not on my side.
Do you think it's that conscient, or do you think it's more like the elves, we will find out, are the Lorwyn elves being protected by the light of some trapped elementals that they've captured? So it's Isilou kind of being versus the Lorwyn band?
Yeah, I think so.
Is there that going on?
I would like to think that they're more ambivalent, and it's only now that someone's trying to take an active role, and this is also why I think Lowryn does what he does, is because he knows now that Morcant's trying to disrupt the cycle, which for all intents and purposes has been perfect. You know, essentially she's going to do the Una. And the last time that the Una thing happened, it ruined everything. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone is aware that the cycle is necessary and you need... And this is what the narrative is really trying to push, right? Is that you need the light and the dark.
Yeah.
And if anyone tries to imbalance that in one way or another, I think everyone who... or especially the more transient beings will have an understanding of you're trying to create imbalance. And there shouldn't be imbalance. And it's a wonder why Isilou doesn't just go, oh, actually, I probably shouldn't be. I should go back to bed. See you later.
Yeah.
But obviously can't help it because they've been awoken and they've been, you know, roused and they're on their little, you know, morning tantrum. But it takes maybe that's the shot of coffee of going, wait, they're going to try and actively harm me? Okay, let's make sure that doesn't happen because catastrophic things would happen if that does.
It is shown that the elves are from Lorwyn, as I previously mentioned, using captured sunlight elementals as lanterns to guard against the night, which is pretty fucked up. A battle ensues between the two factions. During the chaos, Tam is hit with an arrow, which happens just as Rhys arrives.
Oh, wait, no, what was my thing? The thing for this? Oh my god, out of nowhere, it's Rhys with a fairy and a steel knife! You know?
It is very much like
absolute scenes.
There's a lot in the story of people just showing up.
Things just happen, man. Yeah. They just happen, and there's only so many ways you can write that things just happen.
Sometimes they just have to happen.
Yeah.
Rhys arrives and stalks towards Marilyn with an intent to kill and strikes. Immediately, he questions his actions as Marilyn did not seem to resist. Which to Rhys is a very un-Una-like trait. So obviously he's worried that she's Una.
Guess what would have helped this? Words.
Just fucking talking to
communication.
This is a fucking
empathy.
Like, Jesus Christ.
For someone who's been waiting for 40 years to make this happen, it was kind of like, and we don't really know why he thinks... We do know why, and we find out why, is because Oko's been creating, almost like tricking Marilyn. It's almost like Rhys has believed the lie, but the lie wasn't ever presented to Rhys. So it's almost like Rhys has really jumped the shark on this.
Ooh, I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I was going to mention this a bit later, but as we're talking about it, I think Rhys is totally off the hook for this entire thing. Later in the story, we'll talk about how Oko, for like 20 paragraphs it seems, just kind of goes... I know I told you to do this thing and made you do it, but it's your fault that she's dying. And it's like, fucking no. Marilyn charged him with it.
Yeah. Oh, do you think when he took this place of the fairy in the throng, he's been whispering also to Rhys? Because he's... So
later in the story, we find out that the Oko fairy has been sort of like nudging him towards like she's been having these voices and like she's...
And then obviously she's believed this because he's been giving her the voices, right?
Yeah.
Because she has been hearing someone laugh.
Oko's been playing them both because Oko thinks, which again we'll talk about later, but Oko thinks that she is turning into Una.
So he's just been a little dick to her.
Pushing them both to be like, let's escalate the situation.
Right, yeah, sure.
Before he fully realised who she was to him. Rhys gets done real dirty in this story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
I agree. But yeah, we'll kind of see that.
It does feel a little bit. Again, the word gullible is maybe a bit too harsh, but there is an element of like, dude.
So this is the other problem with them taking all of themselves too seriously. His whole thing. So the whole thing is that Lorwyn elves fade very quickly, and the only reason he stayed alive is because Marilyn's magic and the magic of her promise that she made him take his oath. And her pseudo-Una magic has kept him around.
I need you to be alive to end my life if it needs to happen.
So I understand that his entire existence is this role that he's fulfilling. However, you're right in as much as if they had taken a pause to be like, right, so I'm really about to kill you now. This is actually happening. Tell me anything that should make me stop it.
Yeah.
But they don't.
I guess that's the thing that's almost the opposite for Lowryn, right? Is that Lowryn had that moment of a pause, a conversation, and went, actually, you know what? no, this is fucked. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But maybe the whole problem is with everyone else is they're so stuck on that. And maybe this is why the cycle's good. It's because if you don't switch back and forth, you get so carried into this one narrative that it becomes very difficult to then alter that path.
Very prescient for our own political climate.
Right,
So he immediately questions his actions as Marilyn did not seem to resist, which to Rhys is very un-Una-like. At that moment, Marilyn's brother fairy, who she was like, that's my brother, transforms and reveals himself to be the fairy elf humanoid, much like Marilyn, and we see, to the audience's eyes, the planeswalker Oko. Ooh. Although not quite the same Trickster Oko vibe or appearance in the card art that we are used to. In fact...
This is Lorwyn. No,
this is Shadowmoor.
This is Shadowmoor Oko.
In fact, he is the Prince of Shadowmoor. So... we learn through exposition that Marilyn was made to be the ruler of Lorwyn and Oko the Prince of Shadowmoor. Oko was made first and fucked off away from Una before Marilyn was made. And this is maybe my next real big sort of like, why was this in the story? I really hope this wasn't Shannon's idea because it's so convoluted. It opens up way too many questions about Oko, about the nature of the plane, about what the fuck Marilyn and Oko even are.
Because in my mind, the plan, right, so the way that I look at it is that Una created vessels so that when she eventually died, because I think she was under the impression that the world's going to revolt on her and kill her, that when that happens, she has someone, an avatar, that will essentially grow back into her and she can then take the place of,
right,
that will then exist beyond. Obviously, Oko revolts and then fucks it off, so she has to create a second vessel. And then that second vessel... Because it's funny, because Marilyn doesn't change in between. No. So maybe the idea was that Una was like, right, I want it to be Lorwyn forever, and I am Lorwyn. And then if it goes to Shadowmoor, because she never wanted the day to end, if it happens to go to the Eternal Night, I've got someone to rule it, and that will be me, but I'll be ruling it in Shadowmoor, because I won't exist as me in that time. And then when that didn't work, she went, right, let me find a vessel that can go day or night, and pour myself into it. Because otherwise, Marilyn should also transition into
So this is problem one. I've got several different problems that we're going to... And you've just reread all these stories. I've skim read them today, but I hadn't properly... So you're going to tell me what I'm missing. So problem one is Oko changes in his humanoid form, and we'll see it later in this story and the next one, where between the light and the night, he will turn from being this princely Oko into the Oko that we recognise, which is ostensibly the Lowryn Oko.
Yeah. So normally you'd expect Lorwyn to be better than...
But that's his worst version.
That's his worst version.
Because he's the Shadowmoor one.
Yeah, exactly.
But both sides are still recognisably Oko and up their own arse and a bit trickstery, but Shadowmoor Oko is definitely more regal. But that's also interesting because Lorwyn Oko, the one that we recognise, always had that little thorny crown thing.
So the way I look, so I think that you don't change so much that you are a completely different thing, right? It's accentuations or regressions of the same thing, like the horn situation with the elves. My thing of why this is a retcon and I don't think it's a perfect fit is because Marilyn was an elf shell vessel that Una poured herself into.
Yes.
What is Oko?
So Oko, that's a really interesting question.
Is he Velis Vel related? Because obviously he always does shapeshiftery kind of things.
I seem to remember in the very first time we met him in the the Wildered Quest, which was the...
Garrick's a lovely daddy.
Was it Kate Elliott? It was Kate Elliott's story for the original Eldraine block.
Mm-hmm.
He is described as a fairy, and he self-describes as a fairy.
But he is not a fairy by Lorwyn standards.
No, and because I think it's kind of, this is where the subtlety sort of works, is that they're both fairy elf hybrids. They're just kind of the flip reverses.
See, I don't think that Oko's a fairy elf hybrid. I think he's a fairy shapeshifter hybrid.
Oh well, fair enough then.
Because you see him in his artworks with other shapeshifters. Yes. He can turn other things into other things,
and he does change shape here.
And I don't think there is no existing frame of Oko that exists in Lorwyn or Shadowmoor for that to be the vessel, which is why I think it's a retcon, because I don't think that he would actually exist as a thing that Una could then put her essence into.
Well, here's the other bit of the retcon, that this is kind of like, again, one of the two big pillars of my problem with this whole thing, is that, so we're saying that this version, this was meant to be the big reveal, and also like, but hang on a minute, he's a very princely Oko. The Oko we're used to is this kind of low-key trickster guy that we've seen on every other plane. So, what are we saying here? Are we saying that if creatures leave Lorwyn Shadowmoor,
they get locked
in one version
and I think
of
the
themselves?
idea is that, he happened to switch. That was the bit that made, you know what, actually, fuck you, because I don't want to be this. Because when he says that... So there's also a little bit more to the story of where Oko didn't know anything about the day-night cycle, ends up going out into the world, meeting this giant who takes over as being his father.
Yeah.
That father figure is killed by Una because the giants, because they exist outside of the day-night cycle, or at least have knowledge of the day-night cycle, taught him things that he wasn't supposed to know. Because Una didn't want him to be super knowledgeable. She just wanted him to be the Prince of Shadowmoor. And when he started gaining knowledge outside of that charge, of that role that she wanted him to play, he started to become unpredictable. That's when she kills his father figure, which leads to a very funny line in a moment that I'll come to. And then that's the point of where his spark ignites because of the and then he disappears.
Okay.
And he disappears as Lorwyn Oko, and then has no real reason until now to think to go back.
So, I mean, I really appreciate that that's the read on it, and I'm very glad you've explained that to me. It still feels a little bit janky, because it's a retcon.
It is. It's a retcon.
My second problem is that you've hit on, and this was the thing that after skim reading it today, I was like, hang the fuck on. He has a spark?
What, Oko?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean? He's a vessel created by Una.
Calyx?
No. But Calyx was something that we at the time went, that's bullshit.
Yeah, no, I'm not, yeah, but that's the thing is they've already said that, hey, if this bullshit thing can happen...
No, you can't use Calyx as the thing, because then it just doesn't matter anymore.
Well, exactly.
No, Calyx was the exception.
I don't think Obnixus should be able to get his spark back.
Oh my god, no, it's nonsense.
This is the whole point, is when you don't... Everything in this... Because the magic multiverse is so large... And this is why with Edge of Eternity you have to kind of go yada yada. There are so many things that go like, fuck it, you just have to kind of go with it.
I still think with Calyx, sorry, I know you're going to continue the point, I'll let you. I still think that Calyx, you can yada yada the Calyx thing away, because he's the agent of fate, of the god of fate. If he's fated to have a spark, that it manifests itself, and on any plane, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen on Theros.
Well, I guess if there is a thing of where if Oko, and we don't go into details of it, because again, it's a retcon, they didn't have to, but if for whatever reason the vessel... that Oko was Una's essence was poured into happened to also have a latent spark, or maybe Una had a latent spark and a part of her that she put into him triggered. Who's to say that what would have been really cool at the end of this? I can't believe they didn't do it. Is Marilyn should have then also sparked, similar to how Rowan and Will had twin sparks, and it was Una who had the spark.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this, Marilyn kind of being like, either I'm about to die, and that's what allows her to come up, and then Oko goes, oh my god, let's just go and travel the fucking multiverse together.
Just leave all this behind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then that would have been a way more satisfying end, I think, than what ends up happening.
Yeah.
But again, I agree. And the reason why all of these square pegs aren't fitting in the round holes is because you're retconning a massive, years and years and years worth of this character just to go, what plane has fairies? What plane are we going to soon? Oh, I know what can fit in. And that's why it annoys me that so many of these things that feel really, really convenient and then also inconvenient is because none of them were supposed to fit into the greater story, but they were like, it needs to be Oko. And Shannon's gone, I'll do what I can.
Because Shannon... No, not Shannon. Oko and Marilyn don't even, they don't look like they're related.
No, and there are so many things of my brother, my sister. I'm like, I don't believe the relationship because the relationship is false.
Yeah.
You know, there was nothing about this whatsoever in the original story, and there's no way it wouldn't have been mentioned if it was, which makes the retcon so... And again, people listen to me and I think they can get away with it because Lorwyn was so long ago, and they've rewritten the story enough here to go and people go, of course he's from Lorwyn! But if you actually know enough about Lorwyn, it would really aggravate you. It just doesn't make sense.
Back a point that I was making earlier about needing to know the previous story. I think that what makes this a little... Look, so we're at episode 6 now of 7. The 6 and 7 are the most exposition dump heavy episodes, and it really leans so heavy on the idea of going, you guys all remember what happened in Lorwyn, right? Well, this is a subversion, and it's I think this would have benefited. We're not finished with the plot synopsis yet. Maybe this sounds more like a wrap-up point, but it relies so heavy on the previous story that it would have just benefited from being very much almost like I fucking loathe to bring it up because we didn't like it, but like Ether Drift, that was a story about Avishkar that had some context for its history in the past. It wasn't a story about Kaladesh continued.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But this is, again, I think it needed to do too many things. It needed to reintroduce you to the plane, but it's also introducing you to the plane as it is now, which is very different to what it was before. You need to kind of know a little bit about all of the characters from back then, even though realistically we don't actually spend any real focus time on them. We're actually spending more time with the character development of characters from a different plane. So all of this Lorwyn stuff, or all the Lorwyn lore that you need to know or catch up on, is actually sitting in the background, even though you kind of need to have a good knowledge of it for any of the stuff that's now and relevant to you to make sense. So it's almost like it's battling itself to try and go, like, these are the important things that we're trying to tell you, and you kind of need to catch up with all of them. And actually, realistically, the end of this story, the least important part of it for future reading is the Lowryn.
Yeah,
we don't need you to care about that anymore. That can go away, because now it's all about, and we'll get to the second massive one, but it's now all about these stories from Strixhaven, because clearly these characters are going to be in the secrets of Strixhaven.
Yeah.
Of course they are. And in similar fashion, Oko will then continue to go, and maybe even off the back of this, because the line I thought was hilarious was when he's talking about his giant daddy dying. Fathers always leave you, fathers always fall. I was like, mildly ironic and also kind of tragic that he followed in his father's footsteps, which wasn't true because obviously his father got killed, but then he just became that to Kellen, which is maybe we'll get a story the next time we see Oko, it's him going back with Kellen going like, so I've had a moment to think. By the way, there are two of me in here. Just so you're aware.
Maybe you like the other one better.
Yeah. Maybe I am the other one now, and maybe I can be your daddy. You know, like, who knows? But it's kind of funny that there's all of this kind of going on, all of this relevant stuff for the future going on. And it's going on over the top of the Lowryn story that's trying to re-justify itself with a story from 15 years ago that it has to catch you up with whilst also rewriting it.
Yeah.
It's such an undertaking. And this is why I think most people are saying that there's way too much to do here. Seanan had a massive undertaking. I don't think more stories would have necessarily helped. I don't think extending this out further. What it needed to be was two separate stories
a lot of
that
people
can
are saying that
can then run concurrently with each other. Or you do a prologue 2 episodes, epilogue 2 episodes, and then you just leave Lorwyn's story by itself. Maybe you even have a point of view of Oko, and it's not a conceit of going who's this fairy? Because I don't think that mystery really fucking mattered.
It certainly doesn't matter to the day-night cycle.
No, and it annoyed me as the reader, where it keeps going, the fairy looked at himself, tittered, and ran off. I'm like, oh, why are you playing coy? I want to know why it's like. It makes it more interesting to see things from Oko's point of view, coming in, going like, oh shit, I have this great idea, I'm doing all of these things, and then at the end goes, fuck, I fucked up. Instead it just looks like this little trickster who messed up a load of stuff incorrectly, and then spends 2 episodes going, what did you do to my sister? It's like, you did this! You made this happen!
You did it! You're
an idiot!
So, alright, so like, we've covered a lot of what the plot synopsis is going to go through, so I'll rattle through, just because I took the time to write it, and I'm going to say it. Rhys and Oko monologue at each other for about fucking 700 words, and Marilyn and Tam lying, dying, which Sanar is losing his mind about.
Shit, Tam's dying, can we? And everyone keeps going, shit, it's like,
Tam's
literally dying!
Like,
literally dying right here, please.
So, sorry, a little bit of an important plot thing I didn't mention was that Rhys's blade was coated in the Dawn Glove plant. The moon glove, which was the Lorwyn flower that is the antithesis of the moon. And
it's not shanky. It even says like he didn't like drive it into it. It's just like a little cut on the arm.
He just fucking nicked her. Yeah,
which is also kind of silly.
So Rhys and Oko monologue each other, and Marilyn and Tam lay dying, with Sanar demanding that they're saved. Rhys's blade was tipped. Oh, I did mention it. Good for me. With the moon glow venom, and is claimed to be lethal. It is then revealed that Oko mistakenly also thought that Marilyn was Una, and was the one who pushed Rhys to paranoia. Along with Marilyn's dreams. So, little side note, we don't have to go into it. Is this still yet further proof that the voice inside the Icorian crystal was Oko?
Yeah, I think so.
It has to be.
I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get.
No, but like it's the same deal.
Yeah, I want to mess with things.
Yeah. Anyway.
I also think it's funny that I think he has a minor go at Marilyn for running away and leaving her duties behind. That's what you fucking did! Anyway.
That's what I fucking did! Yeah, insufferable. Both the Lorwyn and the Shadowmoor Oko are just absolutely...
It doesn't play... Yeah, this story doesn't... It kind of gives him a greater story, but makes him a way shitter character.
It just makes him even more insufferable.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, maybe that's the wrong word. Shit, he might be a good character, but I don't like him anymore.
No.
I like him even less.
He's not a cad. He's not like he's a bit
and this was the opportunity to bring that... And that was an opportunity to bring it back round, and it just didn't happen.
There's a line he says later on where he talks about, so tragic that someone like me should be given like the task to save my sister, and it's like, oh, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he's like, oh, why do I have to do good things in this one? It's like, you didn't even need to be in this story, fuck off.
Rhys and Oko continue to dick swing at each other. That's actually how I wrote it.
Good.
As Oko halts the battle by turning nearby combatants into, is it pigs or bunnies?
Bunnies.
Yep.
One elk and a bunch of bunnings.
I wrote a note for myself here. Shadowmoor/Lorwyn Oko. Does Marilyn change? No, she doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Ajani then arrives, Deus Machina again, with Kirill, and after yet more exposition, we're not meant to be here. It is revealed that the Dawn...
Want to go home!
that the Dawn Glow flower that Kirill picked for Morkan earlier could potentially counteract Marilyn's Moon Glow poison wound. Which is, I think that's kind of a nice little Chekhov's gun that they put in there.
Yeah, the idea being that the weapon that Morkan wants to use to kill Silu will be the cure for Marilyn's wound.
Yeah, I think that's kind of...
And it allows it to be right there
Yeah,
without
yeah.
it feeling conceited.
Yeah, that's pretty tight.
Contrived, sorry, I think.
Yeah, well, I think both of them work. Language. Oko leaves to find Morkan, and Ajani attends to Tam's wounds because he's a white healer planeswalker. Kirill and Sana also go looking for Morkan and find her in battle with the Moonglow flower.
Pause. Because there's a moment while Ajani's trying to fix Tam, and Ajani's like, "Oh, I don't know why it's not working." And then Oko turns around and goes, "This is a plane of stories."
Oh, that happens a little bit later.
Oh, it's okay. You're gonna get okay.
Yeah,
I want to talk about
yeah,
that.
Yeah, we will get there.
I want to talk about that.
We will get there. That's so funny that you mentioned it. As he go right, Kirill and Sana also go looking for Morkan and find her in battle with the Moonglow flower in hand. So she's distilled it into this liquid poison.
Yeah.
As she goes to attack the students, Lowryn shows up. Was he out nowhere or was he with them the entire time?
I think he's out of nowhere. I don't think he's. I can't remember. I don't think it's particularly relevant.
Doesn't matter. Shows up in his Shadowmoor form, so he's got these thorn-crowned horns.
Yeah.
And fucking headbutts Morkan.
Yeah. Headbutts.
Thoosh!
She drops her little elemental thing, turns into her Shadowmoor self, and immediately goes, "Ew, I'm gross and disgusting." She doesn't say this, but that's essentially what happens.
It is a very nice little Lorwyn-y moment, specific to Lorwyn, because obviously the whole idea of the elves in Lorwyn is that they despise non-perfect
eye blights,
right? They call them. The irony being, of course, and the whole comment on like ruined classes is that many of the
always
perfect elves, they have glamours that they are eye blights themselves, but they use glamour to make themselves important. So the fact that
there's I think there's a card called Masked Admirers in the original Lorwyn set, where they're basically, as much as they are pretty, they definitely, as you say, try and cover up and make that it's like makeup.
So
essentially.
It's false. Yeah.
It's false. Yeah.
So this idea that this thorn-headed being or another elf like disfigures her, which is kind of brutal, and also like don't go around disfiguring people, but Morkan is evil, so whatever. But like fucking disfigures her, and then not only that, but it causes her to transform into her Shadowmoor self.
And that psychological change then goes, and then she even looks around and goes, "Oh," and I think she turns around and straight away to Isildur and just starts muttering apologies, being like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that bitch did. I didn't mean. I'm sorry, she's a cunt, honestly. She looks great, but I'm the nice one, you know."
Which is the kind of stuff I appreciate about this day-night cycle. And I wish they'd kept it to more stuff like that.
I wish that we'd seen more of it. It would have been really nice to see more of it.
What they needed to do is they needed to make the rules clearer.
Yeah.
Even if they sort of yada it with
and then they can break it in all of these little ways.
Yeah. Instead of it being everything is so up in the air and unclear that it sort of doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, like I feel like there could have been a much longer scene when Kirill was dealing with the cinders and the moon glove. Like that, dawn glove, sorry. That just had to happen in such a small paragraph. I'm like, that was almost half the story right there. You could have done so many cool things and investigated the cinders versus the Rhymekin. Again, maybe this is an aside story. I shouldn't maybe bitch too much about it, but it does just feel like everything is yada-yada'd kind of quickly.
So they've got the moon glow poison in hand, and they race back to Marilyn. All the characters are now returned to Isildur, who is still trying to protect the main group from the Kithkin elf.
Yeah, not actually like hurting anyone, just kind of standing around making some fog and stuff.
Just literally lying there. It's kind of cool. It's kind of badass. Marilyn and Tam are still dying. Urdu then arrives with Abigail flying alongside over the horizon. So we get Abigail back. Oko takes the moon glow from Kirill and gives it to Marilyn. He ministers it to Marilyn as Ajani struggles to save Tam, seemingly. He doesn't know why. Oko explains that story in the ether is as important on Lowryn as actual magic, and that if he wants to save Tam, they'll have to save the Queen
because we're currently in a tragic part of the story, which is why Tam is also dying.
What the fuck does that mean?
Are you mad? Yeah, the implication.
What? That has never been part of Lowryn.
The implication.
I don't understand where that's coming from.
Oh, mate, it's another thing that, if it's true, you could now have a whole fucking chapter about this, Or you could have had chapter this at the beginning, and then it comes full circle.
The plane already has way too much stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the next time we go to Lorwyn, story time.
Lowryn stories with the day-night cycle, and then all the different tribes.
It turns out the entire plane of Lorwyn is just, I don't know, let's say Urza reading a book years ago that happened to then become a whole fucking plane. You know, it's that kind of bullshit of where I could imagine them going, and it was all a dream.
I just do not understand. And also, functionally, it doesn't matter, because Marilyn is healed from the poison, and then with the last few drops that Oko doesn't need to bring her back, because her wound is now a normal wound which they can heal, whereas before it was like a magical wound with petals falling out of it. That's the idea. Yeah. He gives the rest of the healing tincture to Ajani, so he can give it to Tam, because the idea is that the story of her wound is that it was inflicted by the night, so the poison that fights against the night is going to save her. But here's the fucking bullshit. He says about the story, he says don't try and heal her because the story matters, and then the way he heals her is with actual medicine.
Yeah.
It's not to do with the story at all.
No, it's almost as if like, the story needed to go this certain way first. It's like,
So the question is he telling the truth by saying it's to do with the story, or was that just a way for him to get the medicine?
Yeah, I mean that's the question. Was it a lie? And then also, I think there's probably something in there about Marilyn needing to make the choice to want to like survive.
Oh, I don't like it.
And the whole thing just feels very twee, and because it's. And even like there's paragraphs of where it keeps talking about how he's administering it, how like she's softly like takes a little swig, and it kind of goes into a bit too much detail for something. I'm like, just drink
for a while.
Just drink it.
It goes on for a while.
And I think it's almost they had to justify this big bravado at the end with multiple people dying and everything. And I'm like, I don't think Tam getting injured was necessary. If you take that out of it, it doesn't change anything.
There's a moment where Oko says something like, "No, my story will not go this way; it will go another way," which leads more weight to the idea.
Is he powerful enough then to change the fate of the plane?
So I'll be saying, but this is the whole thing. It adds weight to this idea somehow that there's this like the predeterministic, fatalistic
which
thing
is a great thing to bring into the story at 11:55. You know,
there are two planes that we know of that stories really matter on, and neither of them are Lorwyn. You have Theros, where fate is a tangible thing that they have to break away from. It's a literal force of nature. And then you have Kaldheim, where stories, they're not magical to the point where they change reality, but they are. There's
an actual like, it's almost a berserker-esque kind of thing where it creates. It's almost like at the moment, again, bring it always Lord of the Rings. In The Hobbit, when the dwarves are singing at the beginning, that feels like it has weight and power to it. You know, like fair enough, that's cool, I get it. Like, most spells should be songs or incantations, so that makes sense. But this idea that there is a greater, as you say, fatalistic narrative, which, in a grand scheme of things, I don't hate. But the fact it comes in so late and feels so nebulous, and then I don't think if we're going to touch... Who knows when we go back to Lorwyn again. But this idea of a day and a night cycle does feel very story-esque, right?
But it's the story of who you are, not of what your fate is. Like, and if that's the case, if that's what they're going to do with Lorwyn...
True, that's it, because if the idea is you've got two different personalities inside you, who is it...
Who's in control?
Is fate dictating, it's too much.
If you do it for Lorwyn, you have to do it with every set of magic that bases itself on real-world mythology.
Yeah, because otherwise you should have... Otherwise, it takes away your impetus, right? And if the idea is that each side of you has its own impetus and both are justified, but actually neither of them matter because everything's just happening on a grand story scale anyway, what is ultimately the point?
Hasted it. Urdu, who was chilling with the merfolk until Abigail arrived to their domain and roused it. So Urdu smelt Islu on Abigail and went, "Oh, that's not right," and fucked off.
Followed, yeah.
Fine, simple enough. Brings the daylight, and the two elemental gods circle and greet each other. Not in battle, but as kin. And with that, Islu then returns to its cave, and the balance is restored. So it really did just need Urdu to come over and be like, "What's happening, buddy?
Hey, buddy, you alright?" It's like, "Yeah, what's going on? No, you need to go back to bed, mate."
Yeah.
Alright, see you in the morning.
Really easy fix, but whatever. Yeah. There's a line which one of them says, it might be Marilyn, because she can see everything clearly now, she says, for some magical reason.
The rain has gone.
Oh, sure. There's a line that she says where she says, "It was roused because your dreams hurt it." Whose dreams is she talking about?
Yeah.
Because it's not clear.
No.
Someone had a dream. Is it the students' dreams?
Or was it Oko? Was it Oko's intention to go in and then just because he had the intention and the story was like, that's a cool fucking twist, you know?
Maybe. It's an odd line, and it's not very clear why Isilou really woke up.
There's a lot of not very clear whys in this, and I think for a set that is for a plane that we haven't been to in 15 years that was already complicated anyway, to have a lot of things be unclear is kind of unforgivable.
There we go. Rhys is now unbound by the magic of his promise to Marilyn and fades away.
And then he's unbound from life.
And dies, which is what his card is as well.
And you actually great one, ruining the fucking story beat there. Guess he's dying.
I mean, ruining story beats through magic spoilers is tale as old as time.
Yeah, true, I suppose. Or getting them wrong.
Marilyn now, or like changing the colour of a crystal. Marilyn now intends to rule without Una's shadow over her and offers the same to Oko, so she's still up for it being the two of them, even though she knows she can probably do it on her own. But he declines, citing his freedom as a planeswalker. This is where I wrote the note about his spark, but I will now say something like, he's come onto the plane and made paragraphs of writing about him blaming Rhys for her dying and how important she is. And then when she turns around to him and says, so we're going to do this thing brother and sister style,
He goes, nah,
I'm a planeswalker, mate.
Now you're alive, mate.
Oh, look, you can't tie me down.
Do you know what? My guilt, that's what I think it is my guilt is now lifted, you know? Instead of me projecting it, you know what, you're fine.
An absolute toss.
You know what? Everything that I did, it was for the right and for the good, you know?
I cannot believe the end of his arc in 2 article episodes is that he goes from being, this is the most important thing. He says, there's literally a line where he says, I'm the most important thing to ever come out of Lorwyn Shadowmoor. He says that line because he's self-important. And then 500 words later, he says, no, I'm going to leave. I don't like being here. What the fuck are you talking about?
I guess he doesn't even have this idea of like, oh, I'll come back, but I can't give up the multiverse, you know? But it's not even like,
Unreal.
sister, why does the Fae Court require a queen, you know? Like, I guess Morcant's still going to go around being a twat or whatever, and you still need to create a balance and everything, keep the plane going, but... And would there then be someone else to replace Marilyn, and that person could then grow into the next Una if she's not there? I don't know. It's not going to explain it. But I do kind of feel a little bit annoyed that there wasn't a sparking and the two of them then can go off and gallivant. Or just sit there for a little while, you know? I just have Oko sit on Lorwyn just for a little bit, and he can just be the good Shadowmoor version of himself for a little bit. Instead of just going back to being like, gotta get some abs into some new sets. Let's reprint Oko again, shall we? Because that's how it feels like it's going to be.
So Ajani then takes the students back through the open paths because he knows routes through Chandalar. He's kind of dropped in that town from Chandalar, which is kind of cool. And Lewin goes back through with them, which, as you pointed out, he's the green-black.
He's the green-black, and it filled out the Power Rangers.
Back on Arcavius, Liliana finishes excoriating, which is a word I love,
Great
the students of their adventure.
How dare you trip down a hole?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that is an appropriate response.
But the way I look at it as well is like, and we haven't mentioned this yet, but at no point, apart from them being like, hey, we really need to go home, is anyone like, kind of like, we might be stuck here forever. Now, the reality of falling through an omen path that closes behind you might mean you're never fucking seen again. And yet it's just like, Johnny's like, oh, it's okay. I know that there's a strong Lorwyn to Chandalar omen path. Yeah. How do you know?
Well, because what
if it happens to blip out of existence?
Because they're treating the planeswalkers now as being
the
gods.
thing is, the other thing that pisses me off is there's not been enough, and again, there has been, technically speaking, enough time, but then that has not been enough narrative investigation into the omen path for me to feel like everything's just connected and it doesn't really matter.
See, my pushback on that, I see what you're saying. My pushback on that is that they have established that Niv Mizzet is creating.
But then why was loot important ever?
Because that means that Niv Mizzet's map might not be important because loot exists.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? So I know that, and also, are they connected to Niv Mizzet? Is Niv Mizzet connected to... I mean, you'd assume directly to Arcavius. You'd assume, right? Because Niv Mizzet would probably go like, fuck me, there's another place that has a lot of knowledge.
Magic school and dragons.
Makes sense. But again, because that's not set up, which you could have set up since we were on Strixhaven to begin with, I don't know.
Do you know what? A 5-colour Niv Mizzet would be an excellent dean for Strixhaven. Anyway, so... We're back on Arcavios. Liliana
absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. We're going to tell the kids off.
Tam leaves because that's the last student to be chewed out by Liliana.
Also, can we quickly mention that Tam mentions their teacher explicitly several times, and I think they're going to be important in the future.
Oh, interesting.
Specifically, they say that they don't think of them in Arcavios because any of the mind mages there would then be able to know who that person is, and that person shouldn't be knowable.
Oh, interesting. I didn't pick up on that. Very good. As Tam leaves, there is a knock on Liliana's dormitory door, or study door.
The door.
And a woman dressed all in white, but with jet black hair. Hair down, but with the face of Liliana.
Dun, dun, dun.
Strides into the study and says, darling, you'd better sit down.
We've got a lot to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about.
Dun, dun, dun.
End of story.
So there was a leak. I don't know exactly how long ago, and I didn't even really pay much mind to it. I think I maybe glanced at it once because, read it. That there was a survey put out to not a wide number of people, but to a certain number of people, maybe even only nebulously internally to WotC, people that are like, maybe interact with maybe even content creators, whatever, asking about what would you think about having a Planar Chaos style alternate version of characters. How would you feel about, say, a White Liliana? And I think the name Strixhaven came up.
Oh, interesting.
And the idea being that with reality fracture, or fractured reality, what the fuck we're calling
reality fracture, yeah.
Has Jace accidentally, in trying to make his life, his history better and rewrite it, has he accidentally created an alternate universe where everything went a different way? There's even conversations about Tam being a blue-green Gorgon.
Yeah.
So is that the child? Even though they said that they can't.
Well...
So did he manage to retcon reality to the point of where he is able to have sex with a Gorgon and have a child? Maybe that's another reason why Tam can't speak about her teacher, because her teacher would either be Vraska or Jace.
Oh, interesting.
And maybe they've already been told, don't talk about and think about it. Maybe Tam's a plant from the alternate universe. Or either way, we know that there is at least an alternate Liliana. And then there was already a survey about this being asked about a year ago, maybe longer ago.
I saw a lot of discourse online, because I avoid spoilers more than you do for myriad of reasons.
Mm.
One of them being I'm not necessarily on Reddit. Whereas you actively sort of seek them out, whereas I'm not as fast. If they're there, I'll read them.
Hey, it was the whole Azor thing.
No, that's fine. No, yeah. Like I'm not knocking it. It's just you and I kind of engage differently on that spectrum. There's I did see a lot of discourse about the fact that Tam, even though they're Chandelarian Gorgons, which are slightly different to, say, Therosian or Ravnica,
yeah, they don't see, it's not snakes and...
It's tendrils, but whatever. Yeah. But they looked very, pretty humanoid as opposed to...
You wouldn't look
snaky.
at them and immediately think Gorgon. You'd think Dreads, maybe, or something
I think,
that.
Yeah, they've got, hair in the artwork. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that Strixhaven in general likes to kind of subvert what kinds of things certain people would do, what the colours do, and all this kind of thing. So it would be a good hiding place to hide a plant. So I kind of get that. I mean, look, you're right. Look, we've got alternate Liliana, and as you were just talking, my little mind process of going, oh, what would alternate colours be? It's difficult because the colour pie isn't a 1-for-1. I mean, you've got enemy...
It's 5, right? So you can't go opposites.
But if Liliana was to be reversed, the key moment in her reversal of reality would be the moment where she heals her brother and then becomes a cleric healer as opposed to a black
succeed?
necromancer.
Did Jace, one of the first things you go hey, who are the people that have hurt in life?
Oh, yeah.
Liliana. And obviously they planted at the beginning of the story saying about how she loved him. She will never love him again.
Yes.
But and he will never love her. But at some point she loved him.
She did love Jace,
and that part of her feels saddened by the fact that he might not be around anymore.
Yeah.
So that's already set up. So maybe he had a similar thing of where he went through a fucking flash of all of his life and went, these are the points I'm changing. I'm changing that. I'm changing that. I'm changing that. I'm changing that. And then that caused a cascade of effect. But instead it layered over the top of our current reality. Instead of altering it, it added to it.
Maybe. Or maybe it's like a layered reality where and then the open paths. Maybe the open paths aren't just a gateway between planes; they're a gateway between realities, which is then how we get to Edge of Eternity.
And then, if all these other quote unquote planeswalkers had different lives, would they have sparked?
Yeah.
Does this Liliana, White Liliana, is she a planeswalker as Black Liliana isn't? Or are some of them never going to become planeswalkers because they didn't go through the same things and the same...
They didn't have that trauma response.
They didn't have the trauma response. Or because it was a latent spark, did it happen at a different time for different reasons? Mm-hmm. These are all questions that are really fun to investigate if it happens to be true. And even though they are fun questions to investigate, I'm pretty sure that it's not going to do it in the way that we probably want them to when it comes round to it.
Gatewatch and War of the Spark was very nakedly Avengers and Endgame coded. But they were happening sort of years after the fact.
Multiverse is happening now, even though it's...
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that Magic has a multiverse, obviously it's not a multiverse of different people and realities, it's a multiverse of just different places.
Yeah, but I mean, this is maybe... Yeah, we're talking
this
about
is their version.
Alternate universes of this multiverse.
Yeah,
because each numbered universe within Marvel is its own multiverse, but it's a different version of that multiverse.
Yeah, it's its own reality.
Yeah, so each one would have, say... because one of the things is, each universe needs a Galactus, right? It needs the World Eater. but each one you go to would have one itself. There's very few things that live outside and are only a singular entity. Like the Phoenix Force, for example, exists outside of all of the different multiverses, and each of those multiverses has the plethora of different planets and things going on within them. So with magic, we've now seen the outside of this one multiverse. Maybe we see the inverse of this multiverse, and that's what Jace has done. And maybe reality is rewriting itself to this other one, and they either need to stop it, or it's like an incursion, like with Marvel, of where the two of them are going to destroy each other.
So I think that must be where they're going, because reality fracture. Before I read this story, my pitch for it was going to be it's Jace rewriting or trying to rewrite key moments, which has brought in maybe a couple of weirdnesses here and there. Now that you've explained this with that thing, what I'm hoping for, because I don't know what they're going to do, is that it's not just a full-fledged, this is a timeline that exists, that has technically happened because Jace has brought it into reality X, Y, and Z. What I hope it's going to be, to keep in line with how the multiverse works with pocket dimensions and realms, and like the meditation realm, is that it's another plane that Jace has created.
Yeah, and it's almost like lives within. It's almost like a seed, right? Yeah. A kernel within the multiverse that is either growing, or it's pulling everything in.
Yeah. And that this Liliana is like, because what I don't like about multiversal franchises, like let's just stick with Marvel because that is the one.
Yeah.
The thing that I find frustrating is that for every story that's like, oh hey, it's cool that they've done like, what if Daredevil, grew up with his dad, didn't get killed, and all this kind of thing. I also get really exasperated with the look. I want to follow the stories of Peter Parker. I can't invest in. You showed me the latest Spider-Man cartoon, and I thought it was really nice. But the reason I didn't stick with it, sorry mate, was that I didn't want to invest my time in yet another story where like it's Peter Parker, but what if it like Norman Osborn was his father figure? And it's like I can't invest. I've already done it with these guys. Like it's too much.
Yeah, it requires you to essentially have multiple versions of the character to care about at different levels on, right? And also, I think it creates that kind of if there's a million versions of me out there, why does this version matter?
Yeah, it kind of reduces. The
absolutely, which is why I don't think it's going to be an alternate universe. I think it will be that thing of where the meditation realm has essentially gone like a black hole. It's sucked in, but it's almost generating new thing as it's pulling in. Yeah. And you know what's annoying?
I'd be excited to see individual cards.
Well, this is the thing that annoys me, right? Is that we're sitting here talking really heatedly and very, very engagingly about something that has nothing to do with Lorwyn. And another thing that we would... we start the story in Strixhaven, and we've got all these exciting things and things that might happen at Strixhaven. We're also talking about Reality Fracture, another set that's coming out this year. So the two other sets that are coming out this year seem to be the main focus of the storyline for Lorwyn, a plane we've been waiting almost 2 decades to go back to. And all the elements of the Lorwyn story that we got talking about, we were frustrated with and we want to forget because they didn't make fucking sense.
Because they tried to do too much.
And it's like, extract all of these other cool things out, make them their own thing, just do some sub-stories. I know it costs you money, but they used to do
it. I mean, some of the best stories that, we did, I think, was it one of our very first book, I know we haven't done that many of them to be fair, we should do more of them, but our first book club episode was about that one-off story with Taser Karlov and Tajik.
Yeah.
Just going off and doing a thing. That was its own story that had story relevance, but they just released it 1 month because they just went, separate. Oh, look, here's a thing.
And these are things you could do to hype up instead of accidentally putting fucking promos into the wrong pre-release, which is another erasure for this set. This set has been erasured in its story, and it was erasured in its pre-release.
So was Edge of Eternity, so was Tarkin.
And this was a set that was moved specifically to make room for all of the UBs around it, to the point of where we've got another set coming out in like 3... I can't remember how far away it is, but there's so little time to enjoy this before we move on to the next thing, and it's such a disservice to Lowryn by itself, to the point of where even the story lacked in enough integrity to make it worth. And I think the set is really cool. I think the cards are really cool.
Lowryn
I think it's going to play really cool.
Yeah.
But then the problem is, it's got to a point now where the story is so removed from the set that they might as well be two different entities.
Yeah, we're in a weird spot right now with Magic's story, because I feel like we are, and have been for maybe 2 or 3 years now, like certainly since the Phyrexian arc, and the Phyrexian arc was included in that, we've been in a position very different from when we first started this podcast, when we were like, we really hope they go back to doing these online stories. Oh my god, they're doing a novella. Oh my god, they fucked up the novella. Oh my god, why is this guy fucking erasing our gay characters or whatever the fuck. We're now in a period that maybe if we pull back from, we're in like a golden age of... They are putting Magic story with everything, and they're doing multiple articles. But you're right, it is in a weird push-pull, where it's almost like they're giving us more story, but it's like they're funneling it into our mouths before we have a time to taste it.
Because like the way the analog for me is Neon Dynasty, right?
Yeah.
Neon Dynasty, fair enough, swung into the Phyrexian arc towards the end, but every set was doing that. Every set was, how does it tie into the greater narrative?
The Kaldheim Neo Genesis Evangelion stories seemed like the perfect balance. You're right, yeah.
But most of that story was about reinvigorating Kamigawa, resetting it. It didn't start on another plane. It was the Tamio story and then the Tamio falling at the end, and it was such a gut punch to find out that, holy shit, she's been completed. But that still felt like it was existed within Kamigawa, and then we obviously had an inflection at the end to go back into the Phyrexians. Same with Kaldheim, it was only a little inflection, one scene at the end, almost like a post-credit stinger.
Yeah.
Whereas this isn't a post-credit stinger. This is like Act 1, even the begin. I think you could probably say the first 20 minutes if this was a film, 15-20 minutes would be the whole on Strixhaven thing, and then you cut back enough times, and at the end you probably want that last 30 minutes to be the collapse down. So you actually end up with an hour worth of the story in the middle being the Lorwyn, and that's kind of how it feels, of where it's bookended by things that are, in Wizard's mind, way more important and relevant to the greater story than Lorwyn is. And as we said earlier, it's because Lorwyn doesn't feel like it fits in with the greater multiverse. So why did you try and make it? You should have just done an individual, separate story, which is maybe their market research was that because Lorwyn was so different from everything the first time, and that's why it didn't sell so well, because it wasn't considered to be super, super, super popular, and it's the rose-tinted glasses thing. Also, it was 4 sets, so eventually you start to get to a point if you're like, I'm sick and tired of looking at this set, especially when the first 2 sets are bright, lovely, and the second 2 sets are grimdark. So you go from this, like, the arc kind of really bends back down again, and I can understand why people might have fallen off of it, and I can understand why the story was convoluted and separate, and they want to make it feel like it's part and parcel, but you didn't make it feel part and parcel. Essentially, you just wedged it in and went, that works, right?
Isn't it weird that we're already out of the Dragon arc? How did that get resolved again?
We're technically out of the Omen Path arc, but we're still dealing with Omen Paths.
Well, Omen Paths were done even before the Dragon.
That's what I mean, but the current story only happened because of Omen Paths.
Yeah.
So, like, why did you call it the Omen Path arc when we're actually getting more Omen Path relevance now than we did then?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And yeah, the Dragonstorm was means to an end. That was basically, how can we create an arc that leaves us with Jace fucking reality up, and then that's the next big thing that then maybe resets the entire Magic storyverse. Which is fine, but then don't call it the Dragonstorm arc when the whole point is essentially Jace is going to be a numpty arc.
Isn't it funny how the Phyrexian invasion arc, not the Phyrexian, the kind of, was All Will Be One before or after March Machine? I forget.
March the Machine, All Will Be One, Aftermath? No. All Will Be One, March Machine, Aftermath. There we go.
Isn't it funny
Aftermath's good for one thing, it helps me remember which order the story comes in.
All Will Be One story ends with Jace blipping out of reality. Dragonstorm arc ends with Jace blipping out of reality. I guarantee Reality Fracture arc ends with Jace blipping out of reality.
He needs to stop being in the stories, you know? Like, they got rid of Gideon for good reason. I think they essentially sidelined Liliana potentially for good reason. It's getting to the point now where it's like, just let Jace be done, I think. I don't care. He's already... I want to say, his story got ruined enough with the whole... I didn't believe the Phoenix thing. I thought it was a great idea in theory, but then he just went so gung-ho on this kind of like, fuck everything else in existence. And then Vraska kind of went along with it and then turned out to be random assassin, but that was also part of it because of Luke. All of that was so messy. I think we forget how messy and how much we didn't like it and how icky it was. That now I'm just kind of like, I wonder what Jace got up to. Because I've had enough time to be like, the most interesting thing is he has broken reality. That is really cool.
That will be interesting to see.
That is really cool. I just wish it wasn't around him.
I just think it's very funny how Jace has been in probably the least amount of story he's ever been in since his days in the Gatewatch. And yet he is still the focal point of the entire multiverse.
And he always makes mistakes and he always fucks up and he never learns from it. And that is frustrating as a narrative device. Because you just, every time you see him in a story, it's like, well, he's probably going to fuck it up again, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be the intelligent one. Yeah.
All right, we're coming up to 2 hours now.
Yeah, it's probably enough.
But I think we needed it.
Yeah, there was a lot. It was a lot, and it was too much. There's too much in this episode, and there was too much in this story.
To much like this story arc, I'll bookend this episode by saying I like Seanan McGuire. I know you do too. Yeah. She did a great job with the Markov, the Karlov Manor stories, even though the set was very paper thin. The stories were actually kind of cool. I might listen back to those episodes and go, oh no, that's not what we thought at the time. But I seem to remember liking them. And it is okay to not love desperately and die-hardly everything that a writer or a content producer does that you like.
It's a pretty painting, I just don't enjoy what the subject matter was.
The set is also
That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to do a pre-release. I pulled Urdu easily. when I did.
Which is kind of funny, because you were like, there's only one legend in the entire set that I'm kind of interested in building, and then you happen to pull it.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, guess I have to now.
And my reservation for not just buying them anyway was because it's an Orzhov deck that I already have an Orzhov deck that I'm known for. But then when you have a signature deck that's a colour, or any number of colours, you can't just then never play those colours again.
Yeah, no. And also you can't, it's kind of like you're kind of stuck, 'cause you need to stick with that deck anyway, but you kind of don't want to change it into something else, so it kind of becomes its own separate thing. And it allows you to then, you shouldn't, limitation breeds creativity, but it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all, right?
I really enjoyed playing the set. There was a lot of push-pull, there's a lot of cool mechanics, and like, nothing seems OP. I will say that elementals with a couple of key cards, if you pull them, do tend to run over everything. But then there's enough push-pull.
I think if you're trying to put... do you mean specifically with Vivid and going into more than one colour, or just the synergies of elementals by themselves?
Vivid for elements is the easiest to do. If you want, we're past pre-release, so I don't know why I'm saying this. This isn't a fucking like Mel podcast. Vivid is definitely easy to pull off with the elementals and limited, but it's that it's the red-blue signifier for the set. That is the doubles up every...
Doubles any trigger, and double triggers is
you have two of those,
powerful,
that's it.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty slick Kithkin deck that also then had Ursuidlu as my bomb.
And I think in
the
two play boosters I've bought since, both of them had that Twin Flame card in it. So
Twin Flame's great, and so my deck was a pretty slick one, and the only round I lost was due to an Elementals deck that just knocked a couple of those out and was like, you're
popped
done.
Off too much. Yeah.
Anyway, let us know on our Bluesky at MT Flavor.
There's lots of opinions we've expressed today that might be completely wrong.
And like, I welcome disagreement. And like, we have some diehard fans, and like, I appreciate you guys so much that you often do. You don't. I'd say call us out is maybe a bit harsh, but you let us know what's up if you do disagree, or if you think that we've just completely missed something. Yeah. Absolutely do. And I think everyone trusts that we're not the kind of content creators to be like, oh, fuck you guys, you don't know what you're doing here. Like, we
have strong opinions, but those strong opinions are very malleable if we need to be. We have no
I don't have a backbone.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me what I think.
But like, I think this is it. Like, we get animated for effect, and I feel confident sometimes talking on things that maybe aren't necessarily my experience, because I think I trust that we are relatively knowledgeable and worldly people, but also open to being told that we're wrong. Mm-hmm. So feel free. I wonder how this has been received. Yeah. I love the fact that they went back to Lorwyn, and I love the fact that there are new Lorwyn cards in circulation. I just maybe thought this story wasn't it.
Yeah. I think the set is as much of a success as Neon Dynasty is, and I don't know any other sets apart from, I think Alara is now the next one that they would have to go back to that's not been done in a long time, that they didn't want to because it got stuck so much in its own identity. I think that the identity of the set is fantastic. I think that the story might have been too far removed for them to go back to. Same kind of thing with Alara. Like, you've done the Confluence. Like, what's going to be the hook for that? How can they bring that back into the current sphere? Let's see. Next set is, I don't even know anymore.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Is that Teenage Mutant? And then the one after that will be Strixhaven, Secrets of Strixhaven. Then it's Star Trek, then it's Reality Fracture?
I think Reality Fracture is before Star Trek.
Okay, so we actually get two Magic sets back to back.
No, because there's one in the middle. What's the one in the middle?
Oh, no.
Oh, God. Hang on. I can cut... With the magic of podcasting, I can cut out the break. One second.
True. What the fuck is it?
What am I doing? 2026.
The Hobbit.
Very good.
The Hobbit, yes. So we've got a few more sets to talk about this year, and some that we'll probably still skip over.
Well, to tell you what, when we do the story episode of The Hobbit, I'm up for just rereading The Hobbit again. We can just talk about the story.
Do you know what? Yeah, it could be one of those things of where we didn't do this with Lord of the Rings, but because The Hobbit's a much smaller size sample for story, we could look at that and go, cool, do the cards actually line up with the story? Now, how do we feel?
The reason I didn't dip into doing it for Lord of the Rings wasn't necessarily because it was UB, it's because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. That's like, obviously everyone is, if it's fancy. But I just... it was just never going to work. Yeah. But then now that they released it, I actually do feel a bit bad because I loved what they did with it.
Yeah, I also think there was some glaring things we could have talked about, how like certain cards just really massively misrepresent a character, and this is what happens when you do 6 versions of a character, is some of them aren't going to feel like they hit the mark.
Sure. Or like, I wish certain... Like, Gandalf the Grey is just not... Like, they treat... Like, look, I understand. I don't know why this is becoming all the Rings podcast. I understand Gandalf the White is like... powerful than Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah, because that's the artifacts makes flash things,
they make it seem on the cards like Gandalf the Grey is kind of like Don't Ring Old Man. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.